Good evening, folks, and Happy New Year. And welcome to tonight's Master Plan Update Steering Committee meeting. We've got a big agenda tonight, a lot of action items that we're going to be working on. But we're all pleased to have you. And to start us off, Anna, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Sure. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks. Okay, folks, everybody is familiar with the agenda. Everybody's familiar with the items that we're going to be going over this evening. I'm going to ask your indulgence from the get-go because it may be stern in some instances as we try to guide the discussion.
I will.
So that we don't go on too many excursions.
I will be stern, I promise you, sir.
No, I shall be stern with you.
No, I shall be even sterner. Shall we up the ante?
You'll be the sternest, thank you.
I'm out.
Anyway, again, as I say, welcome folks, it is the new year. What we're going to think about here is it's our plan to have the planning board approve this new master plan, the update to the current one, by the time we do town meeting. Town meeting this year is 1 May. So if we do some quick public math, we're inside of 4 months to finish this puppy up, get it presented to the planning board, approved, and then present it to you all here in town on 1st of May. May Day. So it's time to hustle. Pick the euphemism you wished. Last night when I was talking to the Board of Selectmen, maybe you wanted to talk, it's the rounding third base, but it's only the first inning.
Several.
So you went through several. Go Patriots, how's that one?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, we're going to go over draft strategies tonight. Eric's going to lead us through that. And we're going to go through the January open house, and it's going to be a team event from our KG folks. That's what we're going to do at the public forum on the 25th of January. Board business, we're going to be looking at some other master plans from other towns that RKG has done, because we want to use them as some points of departure as to how we may want to approach our own particular one. We've asked RKG to come up with a draft table of contents, in other words, an outline, if you will, to help guide us through how we do this draft. The final deliverables that will be coming along from RKG to us as the town. And then how do we, as a master plan update steering committee, help shepherd all of this through the approval and to presentation at town meeting throughout the community. Then we'll have draft minutes and adjourn. One thing that I'm going to put in here as we talk about shepherding the plan is an added meeting to our current meeting schedule, and we'll get more about that in a little while. Okay, so with that, Eric, you want to lead us off now on these draft strategies and action steps?
Sure. Yeah, I can just give an overview of the memo that we had sent out Thursday. I think Judy and I were talking earlier. We hope that this would pretty much be a free-form discussion where we've kind of laid out some of these key strategies based on what we've heard so far throughout the process, both from you all and all the town staff, departments, etc. So I think for tonight, we're really hoping to get your reactions to some of the strategies. We can go through them by topic area, or PJ, however you'd like to go through them. But just as an overview, the memo that we put together, I hope tried to sort of lay out the structure for how the implementation chapter of the master plan will be written up, or at least the way we hoped for. So the hierarchy, just going on the first page, would start with the vision, which we've had for quite some time now, I think since July or August, which is, again, the overarching vision for the town and for the plan as a whole. Then as we step down 2, 3, and 4, we get a little bit more specific. So we have the goals, and I just provided an example. This happens to be transportation, just as a way to look at it. We have the goals, which we've also had since the summer. And then 2 new pieces would be the policies, which would get a little bit more specific. So in this case, I think the policy of increasing sidewalk coverage and the number of crosswalks in Littleton, as an example, something we've heard a lot about. And then the action step is really how do you activate that policy? How do you actually implement that policy? What are the steps that different folks in town who would be responsible for implementing that would need to take? So in this case, it would be the actual creating a construction or maintenance fund for sidewalks and crosswalks, which would be a way to actually get them either better maintained in some cases or constructed where they don't exist today, and a mechanism for financing the maintenance and the construction of that. So that's the hierarchy that we hope to use throughout the plan. Obviously open to any feedback that you have, but we wanted to lay that out up front so that everyone could understand how we were going to try and proceed with this. Flipping over to the back, I just thought it would be important to highlight how we were thinking internally as the team of using the hierarchy and using the January 25th public meeting, the open house that's coming up as a way.
Slow down one sec there.
Sure.
I want to get buy-in first from everybody, that the approach you're proposing here is agreeable to all of us.
Sure.
So with that, folks, off your comments?
Yeah, just a thought, I don't have on the action steps. I'd hope to see, as often as possible, a variety of options, rather than just saying, here's the policy you want, and here's the inevitable action step. Well, maybe it is, maybe it isn't.
You okay?
Are you saying that you need to see more than one action step for,
Well,
right?
at some point, we should be considering options, rather than just saying, okay, the process yielded up this as a goal, here's your solution to it. Well, how do we know that's a solution? What are the other alternatives?
Right.
Shouldn't be so.
No,
easy
I
to
think
concept.
that's a fair point. There are issues for which there probably is more than one way to proceed. That's not true in all cases. So
Yeah.
I think what I'm hearing you say is where there are, we should be telling you what they are. And I
Yeah,
think
I-
that's really going to be the function of that recommendations document that we're going to send you after the January 25th meeting. That's where you're likely to see more than one option, where it makes sense to do so. In the master plan, however, the final plan, you really want to have made some decisions.
Fine, but I think we should be considering options.
Understood. I get it.
Yeah,
Yep,
so let's stick with
that's-
Paul's point for a minute. Let's go to page 3 on your handout, transportation. That you're going to, and I know you're going to talk more about this a little bit as to how we're going to do the public forum. But it seems to me that's where we get some of that information, Paul. And I'm talking about the graph there, or chart, called key action steps. So as we go through that process in a couple, 3 weeks, that we'll get more of those opportunities for different options. Is that, we share the same vision here?
We're really trying to take the temperature of the public, that's just different options.
All right, does anybody want to build on Paul's points or add others? as to
Yeah,
this
I'd just
approach?
like to mention one quick one. I don't know if you want to do it you should do it in the form, but I noticed that the issue of cost is slippery. I don't mean you're trying to be, I'm saying it is slippery. And when you say not available, that leads to the construction of a fantasy. So a couple of suggestions could be made about how to address the issue, but the more specific or range that you can give to how much something costs, the better off and the more meaningful both our process and the public's process would be.
I completely agree with you. There are things that we certainly can foresee what the cost range might be. There are many that are not.
For
And a good example is a capital project off in the future where there hasn't even been design work done. Well, we may be able to comment intelligently about what the design or services range might be, but we obviously can't speculate about what the construction cost would be until the design work is done. So in a case like that, what you often do in the implementation chart is you lay out what are all the steps required to do this. There's just pick on one. Not advocating for this, just if you said we want to have a community center for seniors, for recreation, so forth. Well, there's no design plans for that yet. So, you might have multiple steps for an action like that, which would be, determine the most appropriate site, could be a land acquisition involved, design development, and then construction, and then operations.
Could even be a renovation.
It could be anything like that. Well, we don't know what those design choices would be, so we can fill in what we know, but what you don't want us to do is speculate about what we don't know.
No, the don't know is fine, but even if you put in the cost estimate of what something is going to cost to get a development defined,
Sure.
the first step,
Yep.
that even would help. Okay, so this has to go through steps. The first step is going to cost $300,000 because this is not a trivial design effort. Even the
Right.
design effort speaks.
Sure. Yep.
Yeah, I guess what I'd ask on how you approach that, list your assumptions. The assumptions can be deviated at a future point.
Sure.
Not everybody's going to agree with them, but it's a living document.
Sure.
So we get it approved come March or April this year. 1 May we present it. 1 June, somebody says, that's a bad assumption. We go, you're right, it is one, let's fix it. And
Right.
that's the
That's how you
implementation
keep
committee
it
that we're going to
living.
be talking about here a little bit later
That's how you keep it living.
So that's how you,
That's
in
right.
fact, that's the best way. It's almost, I'm not going to say advocate this, it's almost you make mistakes to begin with, people want to correct you, go, you're right, we fix it. Oh, okay, but I speak tongue in cheek there. Okay, I would offer suggested points of contact, if you will, or points of people of responsibility, officer responsibility, we call it OPR, in my business, Office of Primary Responsibility. Make those suggestions too. And the
Yes.
draft plan, we can work with some of the people you recommend. Like if it is a community center, is it the Board of Selectmen? If it's a new library, is it the library trustees, for example? And take it down that road.
Yep.
And again, if we miss the mark on a particular one or don't include all of them, because, maybe what we call OCRs, Office of Collateral Responsibility, who have also a responsibility. But certainly there's one office that's primarily responsible, and then second, third, or others that have a collateral responsibility. Choose words that work in the public domain the best. I'm only using terms that I'm familiar with, obviously. Does that make sense, folks?
Yes.
Okay.
Is there attempt to make kind of hierarchy, that you can't obviously do everything right away? So how do you approach that?
Typically, in an implementation program, there is some way to separate what's a high priority versus something that can wait. Towns get very hung up on how to express that, because no one wants to say that something's a low priority, and yet sometimes things are simply a priority, and sometimes things are like, we have to do this immediately. So what we're going to suggest, I think, when we give you that draft recommendations document a couple of weeks after January 25th, is there's going to be a column that says priority. And we might stick our necks out and say what we think on some of them, but actually, we're going to be looking to you to provide some direction on what you think some of those priorities should be.
Will that priority also come out of the DOT exercise?
Should.
That will
That would be
taking
informed, that would
place?
help to inform those choices, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's one of the things I would like to see us advocate, asking the question of, do you
Mhm.
see this being
How
something we
important
should be
is it?
doing
Right.
next 2 years, 5 years out, whatever?
Right.
And then some of the action items I saw were pretty direct, do this,
Yeah.
as was referred to earlier, and some of them were evaluate this or study this
Mhm.
further and things like that. So
Yeah.
I think there's it's an important distinction as to, I think the things in the former category, the action-specific ones, I assume are predicated on clearly you've been hearing a strong interpretation of a problem and a solution that resonates. Is that fair?
Yes.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so if it hasn't been, there's a problem, but no one's really thrown out like 20 different things, and there's all different things, and I don't think we should be picking one or two. I think that's what we should be indicating that there's further evaluation necessary.
Sometimes that's the best you can do within the context of a master plan, is to say, this is a really important issue, we're not ready to deal with it right now, but we're not going to take it off the table either.
Right, so that distinction I want to be very clear as to
Yep.
that's being in here.
Yep.
Well, in looking at page 3, I had another question about difficulty.
Yep.
So is that difficulty of what? I just really wasn't sure.
You want to jump in, or do you want me to?
I guess it could be a lot of different things in terms of difficulty. If it's a policy, for example, how challenging might that policy be to get through town meeting if it required a zoning change? If it was really, really expensive, that could be a difficulty. If it's infrastructure that might involve the taking of land to reconfigure a roadway, there could be difficulties there. So this was kind of a judgment call to say, sometimes we use the term like low-hanging fruit, if something's quick and it's easy, but this was sort of one other way of trying to express.
Okay,
kind
so
of
it's
that.
basically difficulty to implement.
To implement,
Yes,
exactly.
to implement,
Yep,
yes.
Exactly.
Who's going to make that determination? So no, the way this particular slide showed up, like a difficulty, and you got 3 dots. So 1, 2, 3, least difficult, or
Right.
moderately difficult.
One would be something that could be easily implemented, 3 might be
But who's going
challenging
to
for
assign
different
that
reasons.
value? What's your vision there? Does that come out of the people, or is it you all?
So this mock-up was how we were hoping to, open to your feedback, of course, but how we were hoping to structure the boards that were going to be at each of the 7 stations for the open house. So these boards would be pre-populated with a difficulty rating or a cost, whether that's a dollar sign or, as Mike was mentioning, or we can assign a cost range. We were hoping to pre-populate that, so the public would have some idea from, I think, our perspective at least, if not all of our perspectives,
Let's put a hold on that for now, because I see where you're going, and when we get to that part, we'll discuss that more in depth, okay?
But I do think it's worth noting what you mean by difficulty, because I think other people have an ambiguity as well.
Yeah.
Might be, political will might be as difficult as money.
Difficult
or-
as anything else.
Exactly.
Right, no, you're absolutely right. And, you know, assuming we went with this, I think one of the things I'd probably want to ask people is, we think this is going to be really difficult. We don't think this would be. Do you agree? I mean,
Right.
it's our sense of what this might take, but we would certainly want to do some kind of ground truthing with people about assumptions on this, too.
Maybe it's a
so.
different colored dot.
Right.
Right,
Or
so-
just a Post-it note.
Yeah.
Right, so still sticking with draft strategies for the moment.
Sure.
Put that to bed first.
Fine.
And then how you actually want to run the forum.
Okay.
We'll get into that, okay? So I think Paul made a couple points, and I need to ask you this. It may be it's the way Paul said it, I'm not sure, because I understood exactly what he meant and agreed with it. But initially, it seemed like, and Paul did make a comment as far as it's not an alien concept, and it almost appeared that way to you all. So did we misinterpret your reaction to it? And if...
About the options? No.
Yeah, how Paul said that.
I have no problem with that. All I was trying to say is that some things, it's either you do nothing or you do this.
Okay.
Other things, yeah, there might be some options, and I just don't want to mislead you to think that for every single policy, there's a multitude of options. Sometimes there are and sometimes there are not.
Not to belabor that point, but I think in most cases, it probably are more than one option. But but to the extent that there are different zoning options, say, or different
Sure.
funding mechanisms, or
Yep.
there's, you can achieve, this end by either buying something, encouraging somebody to do something on their own, whatever. There's a lot,
I agree.
And sometimes we'll clearly.
And we're not going to intuitively know what all those options are, so I think
Right.
to the extent that you can provide us with things that we hadn't thought of, that's what I'm very interested in, particularly.
It's also up to us to recommend what, based on.
Oh, sure,
analysis, what
sure.
we think is the better option.
I will tell you that often some of the best ideas about alternatives come from the clients. Just because no matter how much we try to know this community, and we really have tried, there are things you know that we simply do not. So you may see a no-brainer option that hasn't occurred to us, and just tell us.
No, that is our responsibility for sure, as we go through this.
Yeah.
And then certainly we see what comes out of the 25th meeting.
Yeah.
All right, is everybody content with the approach that we're discussing here? Okay, you want to take us now to the open house and public forum? Sure. Run there?
When you say the approach, PJ, you're talking about the whole, does it pop up again here later in terms of the table of contents? Because we're going to be discussing the...
We will be talking about table of contents.
Okay, then I'll hold off my remaining comments until then.
Yeah, this right now, we're just going to talk about the 25th, how we want to approach the 25th.
Right.
What we want to get out of it.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I do have one other quick comment. It sort of goes along with what Paul was saying about having options. I guess I looked at all the list of the different action steps as being various options, and that perhaps some of them actually kind of, in the way that I was reading them, could go together. It's almost like so this is part A and this is part B, and I didn't know if perhaps it would be better to combine them, because then, rather than reporting on something, well, then what happens? And then your part B is, then this could happen if you create the report or you do the study. So I didn't know if that would be something for you all to consider as well.
We might combine some.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's better, I think I have to take it on a case-by-case basis, because
Yeah.
sometimes the combination is like, it's integral,
Mhm.
but sometimes they are separable pieces, and people might feel one way about a part of that step and not another, so, but I hear your comment.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
so that was the last comment.
And I had I think, we can go back to the action steps specifically, or?
Oh, yes.
Okay, all right, then I can
That's what
play
I
with that
anticipate
conversation.
happening here, sure.
Okay, fine.
Chairman, it just, I could do it later on, but since what I have to say kind of parallels what Anna just said and what she wrote in her, the comments that we received, I might as well just say it here now, too. Whether it's the table of contents or this layout of the draft strategy and action steps, as a matter of format, I cringe when I see us getting, again, too married to the 7 or 8 topic areas that are spoken to in statute. I recognize we have to address those, but a lot of projects, a lot of projects, as they will ultimately become for the town, have a lot of overlapping pieces to it. So, to borrow the word that Anna used in her written comments here, avoid the silos to the extent we can. So if that means making, in my suggestion, these, areas that cover the law under the designated topic areas shorter, and then, take the real-world approach and say, Littleton Common, has an overlap of about 5 or 6 of these things. There's a transportation component, there's a public health component, there's, whatever, there's zoning, law, zoning map changes, purchases, infrastructure, so how do you can't look at that as, it's component parts without looking at it as its, project cluster, for want of a better term.
Typically, and you're absolutely right, and typically where that all comes together is the implementation program, because part of the sort of chart structure, if you will, allows you to say, for Littleton Common, say, these are the master plan elements that are affected by this action, or these are the master plan goals that are affected. So that program kind of helps to tie those pieces together.
And just in terms of prioritization, if there's so many pages of bandwidth we're going to use, I'd say put less into the individual topic areas and more into where they all come together, rather than the alternative. Just my thought on the subject. So you can end up with the same number of pages, same number of work hours, however you want to divide it up, but.
I like that.
I hate to agree with Paul, but a good example of excess verbiage leading nowhere is the Lincoln plan.
Oh, I know.
I mean, talk about not wanting to do anything. That was a that was a strategic plan of incredible insight and genius. If you want to get nothing done, submit 374 pages of information to keep repeating.
I don't want to get into a big conversation about another town, but there was a reason why that thing just sort of mushroomed. And actually, they have implemented a lot of it, but it was one of those situations where they had to say, we've done a great job at all the things we've done, but we still have some things to work on. And so the sort of patting oneself on the back just it just got carried away. And that was a town that started out saying, we want our master plan to be no longer than 60 pages. So it was tough for them.
All right.
Can we make ours 3?
Yeah.
Eric, how you doing on keeping control?
It's good. Good? So, looking at my memo now, I realize that it really blends the two agenda items together, the draft strategies and the open house. So I don't know, PJ, if you want, do you want to just keep with strategies, or do you want to kind of move around through the document?
Let's talk about how you want to do the open forum.
Yeah, page 2 really just was just to try and give you an idea of what we were trying to accomplish at the open house, and also how we were going to try and bring in the action steps and the strategies. So I could just go over that real quick, and then we can go into it in more detail in the next agenda item. So I think, as you all have seen from hopefully Martin's emails, January 25th, we're going to shoot for an open house format, 4 to 8 p.m., and it's a kind of come and go. You can spend 5 minutes there as a member of the public. You can spend 4 hours there. It's totally up to you. We tried to make it long enough, the 4 to 8, so that we could catch people on those beginning hours and the end hours, if they're either leaving work and they want to stop by, or if they have young kids who have after-school activities and they need to go home, eat dinner, and then come back out. We tried to just make the timing as flexible as we could. Hopefully that will help to boost attendance at that event as well. We're going to hopefully have 7 stations set up. I have the bulleted list. They generally follow the elements of the master plan that we've been discussing so far. We've combined a couple of them. For instance, community services and government are combined similar to how they are in the master plan. We've also combined open space, recreation, and natural resources. And so many of those action steps really do come together. So we thought it would be good to bring those together in the meeting. In terms of format, people would come in, they can circulate around the room to the different tables. For this particular meeting, we thought that you all could be out in mingling with the public. Right. Maybe pick a couple stations that you'd like to keep your ears to. Again, if you can stay for 4 hours, that's great. If you can't, we understand. We, as the team, I believe we have enough members. I got to just check on one more person. We'll be able to staff each of the stations. So we'll be instructing people, answering questions about the different action steps. If people have questions or something they need more information on, that we'll be there to then be their liaison at each of the tables. So that's kind of the breakdown of roles. Hopefully keep your role really simple for this meeting, and just be listening, and then keep all that stuff in the back of your head, jot down notes, and hopefully when we get together in February and you have the full implementation table, you can then bring some of that that you learned. On page 3, just to flip, I know we already started talking about this. This was just the draft board layout. I was hoping to give you an idea of, it'll look a lot nicer than this, but just to hopefully give you an idea of how we were thinking about structuring this. This would be generally a dot exercise where we would have the action step, again, organized by topic area. This one just happens to be transportation. We'd have the action step. In this mock-up, there's difficulty and cost, but we'd ask people, do you agree? Place your dot there. Do you somewhat agree, which is sort of you're on the fence? Do you disagree? Put your dot there. And what Judy and I were talking, and a lot of times when people somewhat agree, there's obviously a reason there that they can't make a yes or no decision. And that's oftentimes the most interesting piece of information that you can get from the public is what do they need to make a decision? So we wanted to find out, does the town need to investigate this further? Do you need more information in order to make a decision, yes or no, if you had to vote on this at town meeting, or you were sitting on a board or committee or whatever it might be? And then we wanted to ask them, do you think, if more information is needed, do you think it's worth the town spending money to investigate whatever the action step is, if there's money that needs to be spent?
It's really a kind of where are you on the mixed feelings continuum, you know? Are you kind of leaning toward or leaning against? And these kinds of questions tend to sort of get at that.
Yeah. And since this is sort of preference by dot exercise, we're hoping that the conversations with the team and the public can help to inform some of the reasoning behind the choices that they make. I think Daphne was alluding to also, we could do Post-it notes, we could do cards, we could do different things to capture their ideas in written form, so that we'll have something to take back to the office and actually understand why people are making the choices that they're making, more than just bringing it down.
And also, in addition to that, we're asking people, in addition to the key action steps that we've listed here, are there any other actions that you think would help to meet this goal and objective? And they would be put on a note card. And in addition to that, we will ask people, okay, you might agree on steps 1, 5, 10, 13. Of these, which are your top 3 for this particular goal and topic area? So we'd ask them to prioritize. And I think it was Dan who said that we should also talk about the phasing and ask people, you know, years 1 through 5, years 5 through 10, years 10 through 20. When do you think this should occur? Because they might strongly agree, but they might strongly agree that it shouldn't happen until year 6.
I might suggest that maybe we just sort of think about asking them level of priority, because sometimes people who are
Yeah,
really into town
true.
government, they kind of know the whole,
Right.
what it takes to get something into the capital plan, and Selectman Smiley, she knows exactly what I'm talking about. And just what it takes to sort of do that, get it to town meeting, get the bond authorized or whatever. And so I just think if we ask
Yeah.
them, what's
1,
your
2,
level of
3.
priority for,
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
think that might be easier for people to answer.
respond.
Yeah.
How the structure, I think would be good, because people flowing in and out, and you will get the same question many, many times.
Yeah.
And that would seem to retard the growth of the potential of each particular area. So here's what I'm suggesting, either one of your team or one of us, at the front, so to speak, have prepared just one sheet.
Yep.
Only one sheet, list of instructions, so to speak.
Oh.
And we don't call it list of instructions, but,
Yep.
you know, here's our process, here's what we're doing, here's what we're doing. And then before anybody proceeds beyond that entry point, so to speak, they've read it, and then whether it's, like I said, one of your folks or one of us is there to answer that question.
question.
And then they pass that gate, so
Yep.
to speak, before coming to the tables, all right?
Pass go and collect $200 at that point, yes.
I don't know if this belongs in our forum or somewhere else, but there are trade-offs for these goals. And I'm just going to pick the negative one, because according to most studies of human behavior, having nothing to do with intelligence, when you tell someone, if you don't do this, something pretty simple, the following two consequences are looming. Is there any value from your point of view in a forum like this to present where possible. If we don't do something about transportation, you can be specific, whether it's sidewalks, the bus from A to B, or whatever is on the list. If we don't do this, here are the two outcomes if we don't do it. That allows, in my view, a value to be put on by the respondent. Oh, okay. And I don't know if it belongs here or later or never, but I've never heard the discussion of trade-offs. And people do talk about trade-offs in the privacy of the bar, in the home, and everywhere else.
Well, that was her statement about as far as you might not do it on year one, but year 6 might be the time you do it, so that is their trade-off.
Yep.
The trade-off is what do we do now, and what do we do later?
I
In your
think we
case,
were, I think we were kind of anticipating a more, maybe a more informal way of doing that than perhaps what you have in mind. And the whole value of the discussion center is that people can come to a topic area and ask questions. And we get to engage with people more like one-on-one. So, you know, I see that as an opportunity. If someone says, well, I don't really understand why we would need to do this, then we can kind of explain, here are the pros or here are the cons in terms of the overall master plan.
Yeah.
That's how we would be doing it.
Yeah, I disagree that someone comes to these 1-minute or 5-minute sessions with the trade-offs in mind. I really do. And the studies will back me up. And if, just because someone doesn't volunteer it, it also could mean it hasn't yet occurred to them that if they don't do this, the school will have an issue. I'm making up scenarios that may not exist for all topics.
Well, and I don't want to overcomplicate it, but to that point, if I go to my management team and ask them to make decisions, you better believe they're going to want an impact statement. So what does this, exactly that question, every single item has to have some sort of, you know, explain to me, exactly like you said, if I don't do that, what breaks? What does it cost me? What am I going to run into?
What are the
in
consequences?
Absolutely. They won't make decisions without that information. So in this process, why we expect different. It doesn't have to be exactly that way, but I totally get what you're saying. And maybe when we get to the short list, maybe we can spend time at helping, you know, to jot those down and brainstorm that piece. Maybe it's another column, impact if not done, or whatever you call it. I think you're onto something there.
Impact
build
or
on.
opportunity cost.
And to build on it, it's not just the negative, I believe.
It's also
It's
not-
a second, third order
Yeah,
consequence.
Yep.
So you take an action, whether it's, the action is to do nothing, or you've done something, but there are consequences to that. So I wouldn't even know that we want to use the word negative.
No,
It's
I
just-
would never, no,
Yeah.
it's just
Well,
one
impact or
classification of
opportunity
consequence.
cost.
Yes.
Well, yeah, opportunity costs, you can look at it as a financial aspect, or then certainly what you not get done. If you spend $1,000 here, it's $1,000 not available over here. So it shacks the target with that.
What's that other word? Unintended consequences.
Unintended consequences.
See, we usually deal with this, I mean, I don't want to go off to the table of contents for the plan, but there's a section in every chapter that talks about the sort of analysis of needs and issues, and that's typically where we would do that.
In the report.
Yeah,
I
in
think
the
the issue
report.
of consequences comes back to an issue that the other Paul made, which is about trying to basically break down the silos as quickly as possible,
Right.
because this is where the silos begin to break down. When you
Right.
start asking the question, if we do this, this has an effect over here. I have to admit, I'm badly affected by something that you folks taught me, which is housing is the tough part of the whole thing.
It's the hardest part of every
And I've been
master
spending
plan.
most of my time educating myself about housing, so.
It's the hardest part of every master plan.
Yes, the town has done that in a way, and I'll use this building as an example. If anybody doesn't know, we're in the Littleton Police Department station in the community room here. In this building, the police very consciously worked with the town and said, we will take care of the school first. Mike, you can remember, how we went through that process. And then also after that, the fire department said, we will wait our turn. So in other words, it wasn't those silos, if we'll use that word right now, fighting for the money for each dollar. Everybody lined up, it became a community consensus, and we went forward with that. That the plan would recognize something like that for many of these other things that we're looking to do going through the future is useful. Paul's very important point, and Mike's expounded on it, as far as breaking down those silos. I'm not so concerned that we have some individual chapters where they're designed, as long as there are linkages. And those linkages have to be just patently obvious to the most curious observer. It has to be obvious.
Right.
If you feel comfortable that you know how to do that, I mean, I think you do. And I think you're comfortable in that also. So please do that. Does that help? Get the highlights of what you want.
Pretty much. Almost.
That's folks.
Not quite.
Yeah, right. Write a note and maintain that. And then when we adjourn, you can bring it up.
There it is. Can I just see the table of contents?
Why do I have to wait until after you're drunk?
The table of contents, you'll see there's an item in the introduction on overarching themes. That's where things like Littleton Common, here's the cross-cutting issues that come up with the project, if you will. That's at the beginning of the plan, not just at the end. So there's a whole piece to that introduction that's an attempt to kind of frame for the reader what's important here. And those chapters, the topic chapters, are really the documentation that the statute requires. But the introduction, it's almost like the chapter 1 and the last chapter of the implementation program. That's really the heart of the plan.
But again, even at the, at the expense of shortening each of the individual chapters to make a longer practical piece where you're looking at them as, holistic projects, rather than just saying, here's a theme at the beginning, the common area has specifically integrated things that cannot really be separated. You can't just do the sewer piece without acknowledging that it has an economic development impact, and that to make it work, you also have to do a sidewalking piece, and you have to, incorporate zoning changes.
Right.
And those fall, and then if we want that to be part of our housing solution, well, then that has to be addressed in the zoning too.
Yep.
So having them appear in 7 different chapters doesn't sell that point.
No, I know. I completely hear that. I think what
Yeah.
I'm trying to reassure you is
Okay,
this structure will do, I think, what you're asking it to do.
okay.
But that's fine.
And
Also,
we'll see the next
just to
draft.
reiterate something else that Judy said, in the transportation section, there will be a discussion. So the goal is to improve safety and ease of getting around town, better connect the pieces with safe and pleasant walking paths, public transportation. So why? Why did people want that? Because they were aware that it's better for their health, they're aware it's better for the environment, they're aware that it's better for community interaction. So it's explained at that point, right? The trade-offs and the consequences and the impacts.
I'm going to use
In and out.
three chapters to Paul's point: transportation, economic development, and housing. Transportation, easier way to get back and forth to the train station, for example, helps economic development. Where we've looked to put housing and worked with developers to actually locate new housing developments, expand upon properties that already exist, expand upon buildings that already exist in town for economic development, and then the transportation, for folks in town, just to use a totally absurd example, just because we're not going to do something like this, we put a subway system into the town of Littleton so that we run all over the place. Okay, we know we're not going to do something that drastic, but what would that do, though? So is it some sort of bus system, for example? And not that you recommend a bus system, but that how we tie those various points together.
100 years ago, we had a trolley car running, a mile north of here, coming from Lowell.
How often did you ride it?
It was horse-drawn, not to worry.
Well,
But I think you're starting to hear a general
Just saying,
consensus
it's not
amongst
so out of
us
this
here as to
world.
what we want to see.
Trolley car right.
Give me 1 second, because
Why will you?
Mike had brought a point up in his writing. And if you think what you want to say first, Anna, then Trump on this. But the topic relationship to sustainability that you have in here, why is that a very specific point in each of these chapters?
Because I think you asked in your own RFP that you wanted an emphasis on sustainability. And so I was trying, this came up in Groton, so I'm not married to this, but this is what we did there. They were very focused on making sure that attention to sustainability pervaded that plan. And so we just addressed it both in the introduction and in the implementation section, but also in every chapter. How does this topic relate to sustainability?
And Gary, you've been very much a champion of sustainability.
Yeah, I like that approach.
So let's talk
Kind of spread
about
our peanut butter around the whole thing.
spread around peanut, say it again?
Spread our peanut butter around all the
Okay,
chapters.
that it's spread throughout, but it doesn't need to say, peanut butter in every chapter. You want peanut butter spread, if you're wrong with that analogy, but to identify it as a jar of peanut butter, is that necessary?
You mean you don't like the fact that it's called out specifically as
I
an
don't-
element?
And Mike brought it up first. if you don't understand why it should be.
It's becoming more and more of a case where people want to look for it because people are concerned about it, and they want to understand how the recommendations address sustainability.
It pervades it, and as you go through, and like some of these second, third order consequence things, sustainability becomes one of those possible. So right now, I'm leaning towards Mike, but you certainly want to hear what you want to say on this, is to the...
It was clearly identified in our scope that it's something we wanted addressed. In fact, it was identified almost like a separate chapter.
Yeah.
And I
then
know
we had a
when we
discussion
talked last year, we talked about how best to do this, and we talked about how you wanted to have it basically be like the air. You wanted to have it just be part of the environment by which
Right.
you're working.
Right.
And that this is, we're not doing something that's nearsighted, we're doing something that's long range, and sustainability is a broad definition here, not just, crunchy green granola stuff, right?
Right.
It's also
So-
about social equity
Social
and
and
things like
economic.
that.
And all those kind of things. So I think it's good that it gets some small emphasis in each of the chapters, and if we're talking about a relatively short narrative, it basically says
For bullet
how it
points.
addresses some of those sustainability type goals. So
Yeah.
I think it's good.
I agree with Gary's point. I think there's an expectation from the public that they think we're applying sustainability or being conscious of it, so I think they would be reassured that we address it, wherever it legitimately is, part of the plan, or, so if you don't put it in there, they might be asking the questions, that did you really think about it in those terms?
I mean, we're really thinking about like a text box. It's like
Yeah.
just a simple text box, 3 or 4 bullet points.
I think
That's-
that's fine. I mean, the narrative will have some of the stuff that you're talking about, PJ, as to the overall approach, but I think we're just trying to highlight a few
I like
elements
it.
that are specific.
As I wrote, in actually the formation of my objection to it appearing actually comes from your work and from what your own statements, our consultants, said about sustainability. First of all, you mentioned in, I believe it's the Groton report, the Groton thing, you mentioned that it's vague, it's very difficult to not only to define, but also to measure. And my big problem with it is that it's not an issue, that the terms sustainability can't be used and the concepts can't be used, but they vary greatly from topic to topic and between topics. They vary so much that I'm never quite sure what it means, and I'm not sure that I agree with you that the public, quote, expects what we'll call excess verbiage, okay? And in a topic that's been around since 1987 was this original public appearance, as you also noticed in your, and I should also point out to you that the origin of sustainability has nothing to do with anything that we're talking about. Here, the origin was, as you partially quoted, it was a UN
right.
commission.
That's
It
right.
had to do with economic development of developing countries. It had nothing to do, it's far removed from and from that point on, it began branching out till today. Most people who champion protection of the environment, as we do, most people who are very interested in the conservation of energy materials, do no harm, save something for the future, they've moved away from sustainability and have been very precise, let's say more precise. Protection, conservation, preservation, those are the terms used because they have action meaning and because we have an educated public. So my argument is not to
Those aren't the
exclude
only
it from
elements.
not to exclude it as appropriate from each topic. It may be very appropriate to each topic. But I think we should move to the 21st century, and when it's pertinent, put it in the text when you're discussing the element as it pertains, and not have it stand out there.
But conservation isn't the only aspect of sustainability.
I'm sorry?
Conservation and
I
preservation.
didn't
are
say
not-
it was.
You just said
Yeah,
those are the
but
terms
whatever-
people know.
But that's the
Well,
problem.
the other thing, though, is that it is an opportunity to educate the public. So, for
Right.
example, we would break it down into the three-legged stool. that
Look,
is
I'm sorry,
considered to be,
we're
right?
spending a lot of time spinning, okay? As far as this is
not
my
spinning,
point of view.
I was just responding to you.
No,
That wasn't
I'm trying to save us a little time here, because we're going to go around the circle, okay? There is, I don't think it belongs as an explicit topic in the 21st century in a master plan. I think now the
Actually,
public,
some states are starting to require it.
that's great.
And
for the
Massachusetts
states.
is
It's not maybe
It's in our scope.
That's all right, hold it, please.
We're having two discussions.
Yeah,
One
but
discussion is about whether or not we should
Apparently, that doesn't
have
work.
an explicit bullet point for sustainability.
Nobody at this table has argued against having sustainability as one of the recurring themes for each of the topic points. Be very careful. What we're debating here is not whether or not we talk about sustainability. It's about whether or not it's a separate topic in each subchapter. And I personally feel that if you're going to do that for sustainability, then you need to start thinking about doing it for how much is it going to cost, what's the time frame, what are the trade-offs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You could put, and it would be perfectly appropriate, maybe that's the way people want to do it. Bang, 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 bang. Here's what if we're going to do this, this is what we're going to da-da-da-da-da. Sustainability is one of them. Or if you're not going to do that for any of the other ones, then why are we doing it for sustainability? If we're all going to put all that other stuff in the narrative, then sustainability should go in the narrative and not be pulled out. It's not any more of a holy grail than most of these other things, I personally believe. It is important, but it's not a holy grail. So why is it getting treated as such?
Well, I would say the difference would be that in the core elements that we listed, we had land use, housing, economic development, natural, historical, cultural resources, open space, public service, government, transportation, and we put sustainability in.
Then that should be a separate
so-
section. It shouldn't
Well-
be a section in each of those other ones.
But that's
'cause
really
those other
silo.
things aren't going to overlap in each of the other ones.
But that goes
That's-
back to the
that's-
silo.
That goes
Totally
back
to
to,
the silo.
that goes back to,
And the discussion we had a
I'm
year
trying to just
ago.
differentiate, Mike, why it is different, because we did call it out as a item that we thought was important enough to warrant its own presentation as an element. And as we've grown and learned about the master planning process, and we've had these discussions over the last year, I've been conceding to the point that our contractor has made, that it's best to address this permeated through than to identify it as a single element, because it is somewhat nebulous in and of itself, but more integral. You want to integrate throughout each of the elements. So I defer to them as to how best to present it. So I differentiate it, not just like those other things. Those other things you mentioned are important, but those weren't called out specifically as elements.
Those are part of the implementation program.
Correct.
Sustainability is a policy framework. Guides policy formation in the master plan, so it's cross-cutting, it's not just,
And it
Yeah,
does.
I agree. I think you should have some talk about sustainability in every element.
Hold on one
Nobody's
second.
arguing that.
okay.
Peter, where'd he go? You got a comment?
Nobody's arguing that.
All right, I'm sorry, I didn't realize he left. Go ahead.
It's how we present it. That's what's being debated.
Yeah.
How are we going to present it? And there's some objection about pulling it out as a separate subheading, however you want to phrase it.
So it is also a way of talking about the consequences and the impacts, so that if you do pull it out, you can say, in terms of the environment, these are the kinds of things that these recommendations can do to protect the environment. In terms of social equity, in terms of economic equity, these are the kinds of things, these are the consequences of these recommendations.
And that's fine, but you could make that same argument about a lot of other aspects of implementation beyond sustainability.
Peter, you want to make a point?
Not anymore.
Okay.
I'm tired.
Actually, I agree with you that you're saying, Mike, and I think he agrees. You had said maybe a box, and I understand the importance of it to a lot of folks, that the word is actually there, and it's maybe all in uppercase letters at that, to show that we definitely take it to heart. I'm disinclined to do something just to demonstrate we're doing something. We should just be, our action should demonstrate that, not that we choose a word or a few words up there.
Well, it's about expressing the thoughtfulness about it.
Yeah. I'd like to.
I hope we're thoughtful about everything that we put in this master plan, I really do.
We better be.
I think we have been, so.
We are, that's my point. That's why the window dressing that we put around it is meaningless. If we're not thoughtful about it and truly getting it as part of the implementation and making sure that we educate across the board and the community that these things are important, then we failed, and it'll just be window dressing. And again, I'll go back to in every aspect of the implementation, not just the sustainability component. I also think that we should probably think about this, because it's going to be our call, and how we want this to go into the,
But I'd like to help them.
I agree, but I'm just saying, I don't know if
we
we're going to get to a consensus tonight,
And if
and
we don't,
maybe
we
we
don't.
should, think about it a little bit more and circle back to it, and everybody should come in with an idea of, we need to achieve a consensus, one way or the other.
Let's do this then. Can we, do you want to put it on hold and we'll readdress it later in the evening?
I'm not sure, I'm feeling a vibe that we're going to
No,
get
no.
consensus right now.
As we go through some of the other stuff,
No, that's true.
there may be something that causes us to say, yeah, we can do it this way.
So would it also be possible to maybe get a writing sample of where sustainability is used both within each of the elements versus where it's perhaps more broadly?
Groton is the example I gave.
As to how it's presented and be comparable to this?
We just spent 25 minutes talking about one word. Can we move on?
I think we're about to, Peter, but it really wasn't harmful because there's so many other things that came up during those 25 minutes or so. Okay, Eric, continue, please.
Any other questions on the forum for the 25th?
Aaron, you need to know who's showing up, right? Oh, in case I forget to email you, I'll be there.
I'll be there.
It's,
Anyone can't be there?
yeah, dinner. I won't be here.
Really? I didn't know that. Where are you going to be?
Be elsewhere. I'll be out of the country.
Wow. I think you told me.
Was it the 25th, is that what we're talking?
It's a Wednesday, correct?
Yes.
Actually, we're not doing too bad. So so you know what our role is. You know, you want to use us. You're already content that you're going to have enough folks. We added that one.
Pretty sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll figure it
And
out.
between you all and us, I think we'll make it work. Outreach plan?
So the outreach plan is what Maren sent you. It's basically the same responsibilities from, that you had in the previous one. You could take a look and see if there's something you feel you can or can't do. So you say it now so that someone else might take it on.
Are we gonna get the Mike and Renata show?
Yeah, we'll do that.
All right.
Yay.
Get it
I
out.
like Renato's note to you.
Yeah, all right. We'll get it out this week.
Is everybody familiar or refamiliarized yourselves with that outreach plan we used last time?
Yes.
It's number 3 in the printed outline.
And can everybody commit to doing that?
I'll commit on behalf of Rich.
Yeah, my name isn't on there, but I can certainly help out with flyer distribution.
So Anna, I think you had said you would, your name is with regard to the hard-to-reach populations.
Oh, joy.
That's what you had
Yes,
suggested last time.
the last time.
Okay.
Crisscrossing a little bit like
Robert.
It's two-sided, so if you want to take a look at the second side and see if there's an, Maren, what would you need help with?
Fun to look for places that have gone out of business since we printed this.
Right. I think we skipped over a few of these last time, but who are we, who did we not reach last time? Eric had suggested maybe some targeted outreach. We're looking to get ideas of who actually comes to town meeting, that would be able to vote on this, willing to vote on this, get their input sooner. Good for Mike. So how do we reach out to them?
And also a little bit less gray hair in the room.
Please. Watch it.
Don't worry, I'm there.
You know,
Well,
sometimes I can be such a cat and say, where's Miss Clairol tonight?
That's pretty bad.
She picked on us, look what she did to us.
so to reach folks that,
Yeah, with younger families.
one question that had been brought up was around childcare, and so I don't know what the decision criteria is as to whether or not we can offer that, but that might bring in folks as well. If they
Is
know
that something we want to pursue?
I think for this particular format, because it's going to be more come and go and not people aren't gonna be there unless they choose to be there. I would be hard pressed to see anybody there for 4 hours besides us. I think people that are truly invested in it will probably do an hour to an hour and a half, and you can get to everywhere they wanna be and be done. At that point, I don't know that, children would be a deal breaker. I think some people with children, whether or not there was daycare or childcare or not, are probably just gonna run in, do what they're gonna do, and run back out again. I think they'll make it work as best they can. That's my personal opinion, but it is a little arduous to pull off, so I question, is it worth the effort I think we would get a minimal benefit this time.
I'm inclined to do it as well.
You guys think?
It's in and out for the most part, I think.
On the childcare?
Yeah. I do think the flyer does talk about it being any time, but doesn't necessarily talk about the investment of time. It does say,
That's a good
drop in
point.
any
Yeah.
time, but noting that you could,
For as little or as long.
as little as long as you.
Yeah, that's important, I think, because you will get people that otherwise would hesitate to come if they know they only have to spend 15 or 20 minutes to get their input in, they might very well get them.
Right, that was the hope.
Yeah.
Well, and food isn't listed on there, right?
Right, no food.
So, right, I thought we were providing
Mom,
I
snacks.
think we weren't sure.
How do we line up with
Sorry.
the
We
Oh,
got
yeah, that was
nothing
my
yet.
question.
No, we have nothing yet, but when's the next mailing? Do you know?
The mailing, the original save the date has gone out to all the residents. We're too late to get anything for the 25th. We're already the 10th.
Okay, so LLD is out of the picture for mailing.
Right, but the save the date flyer, the first draft of this one is going to everybody.
And what was the response about the food? Refreshments? Not a meal, but refreshments?
Today, that we have nothing lined up, but
Oh.
the plan is
To get something? Okay.
Yeah, light sandwiches, cookies,
Perfect.
water.
Food easy to carry around, like what they
Yeah,
usually
yeah,
say, yeah.
exactly.
And coffee.
Because it was-
God, make sure
Yeah.
there's coffee.
On the slide yesterday, at the selectmen, we threw up that the sandwiches are available.
Oh, so you think we can,
You can advertise that, yeah, if that's your question.
yeah. So I would just light refreshments?
So,
I like that.
Okay.
I go for, you
Flexibility.
Yeah,
can't, you can't buy
exactly.
van vodka.
Beer and vodka?
It's a lousy mix, but if it's all you got.
Here's what we advertised last night, sandwiches, chips, fruit, beverages.
Yeah. If there's a way to kind of get that on there, I would, because that says
Yeah,
something different from
yeah,
light
it does,
refreshments.
It does. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bring your kids, stash them at the table. and
Sandwiches,
then-
chips,
Sandwiches.
fruit,
Oh, you're
whatever.
busy.
Yeah, actually,
Yeah, right.
sorry.
That's right, it's okay, Eric, it's fine.
We have to
The
have
content format, we're
Whatever.
clear on. Our role, we're
Yeah,
clear
just
on.
let it go.
Outreach plan, we're all content.
Yep.
Should I create an event? Remember, Littleton Common created an event last time, it was good.
Yeah, Facebook,
Yeah,
yeah, please.
should we do that? Yeah.
So, can I ask a question? So was the smaller attendance expected for the last meeting, or?
It's common.
I wasn't all that surprised. There's something about second meetings, I don't know, it's just, was it because there was no childcare? Was it because there was something else going on that night? Was the weather crappy? I mean, is it now people are into holiday mode? There's a lot of things that could have explained it. I don't know what all they were, but I do think when you see that happen, you have to kind of ask yourself, well, should we try a different format next time? So that was why we suggested this sort of open house thing, was that it seemed like it was a more flexible way to accommodate a variety of
So I
schedules.
guess my question is, did we do something wrong that we didn't reach?
Oh.
I don't think so. I don't think
And a lot
so.
of times people feel like they already went to the master plan meeting,
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
right? And so what more do
Yeah.
I have to say?
Yeah.
They don't realize that we would be
a
asking them
continuum.
more specific in building. So that happens very often.
We think everybody's just dying to go to a
To go to
master
the
plan
next
meeting, right?
follow-up.
But, you know,
They
it
don't
is-
necessarily
your point's well
understand
taken.
I think empirically, we can state, we may not have touched every single person in town, as I said last night to the selectmen, but we touched every single household.
Yeah.
With mailings through the light and water bills. And other various forms were used to
Exactly.
include the town meeting, where there were 1,000 people there.
Yeah.
So we touched a significant number of folks. Of that.
And then it's their choice.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Somehow or another, I still worry about the statement you guys made in one of the very first meetings we ever had. Is it goes right down to the last minute, and someone stands at town meeting, and they throw the hand grenade in the room.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I worry about that at these these
Yep.
meetings that we've had, and the people that show up, and some are the same. I mean, I've recognized a few that come the same, which is great. I mean, I'd love to have, 50 of the same people show up, but here we are. It's hard to get this board here for crying out loud.
But the beauty of
Well, that's
that
why
is
we
this is a
need-
living document, and on 1 June, we will incorporate that fantastic idea.
I thought it was May 1st.
Moved by May 1st is the meeting. June 1st, I'm using into the future from the May 1st meeting, so to speak. So that proverbial hand grenade as you described, and truly, we put good brain bites to it and you go, yeah, we missed that. And we include it.
And
Yeah, but I don't wanna
realistically,
spend-
that probably won't really happen at the adoption of the plan. It'll be, well, we try to go implement something.
That's what I'm talking about.
Exactly what happens.
When, stand on the floor and, I guess.
So we just gotta remember not, that we have to go re-educate people all over again. This is what, what we did with the input you gave us,
You
remember?
gotta keep the vision and the goals up
Right.
here, so people understand that this step.
Nobody ever
is
asked
related to
me.
that.
But Peter, to your point, Daphne and I actually had a recent experience with something like this, and I often think about projects like this as being a little bit akin to running a political campaign. And one of the first things you do, I'm sure, because most of you have run for office, is
Grease
you
palms.
look at who has voted, and you try to think about, so who on this list of people who usually vote, who knows me? Who's going to recognize my name? And you start kind of trying to build a list of who do I need to hit and who can I rely on? I think you want to start doing that with an eye toward, who haven't we seen? Who hasn't come to a meeting? Who hasn't called me up? Who hasn't stopped me in the grocery store? But almost like take the town meeting attendance list, and say, who haven't we seen? Because the outreach to those people is something that can only happen from you. I mean,
A personal invitation.
That's right, it's the personal invitation. And I'm not trying to create work for you, but there really is a campaign quality to this. And I'm just thinking about, you've all run for office, I think you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's that name identification. Who knows about the master
Well,
plan?
we're not unfamiliar with that in terms of town meeting context, too. I mean, this
course.
past fall was
I'm
a
sure
very
you- I'm sure you
active town meeting warrant, and the
Yep.
folks that were advocates for different articles knew who was coming, and they went after it.
And that's what I'm
And
saying.
what Judy is saying is both holds true for January 25th as well as for May 1st. You got to do it both.
I'm talking about really more than May
Yeah,
1st.
May 1st. But getting them to January 25th would be really good, because then they will have
Buy-in.
buy-in.
We want June 1st, the people that show up to it, not to be a fight to get something, that it's everybody stand up and wave the flag.
Right,
And say,
exactly.
hell yeah, this is what
And
we
the
want
way
our
the
town to
time is
become,
exceeded
not
before
argue about
participants.
how we got to what we asked for. That's the one thing that I just,
Yep,
because
I
if
don't
that
blame you.
happens, I'm done. I quit. So, hey. What is that? Okay, anyway.
Don't threaten me with a good time.
Yeah, don't threaten me with a good time. About 3 seconds is all it's gonna take.
Okay.
So that's how much time you got.
The town meeting, the town meeting was dramatic, mainly because of maybe one topic, the turf, the artificial field. That drew a lot of people you never would see.
So did the fire
So,
department.
so what I'm wondering, and I'm just pulling this topic out, because if our next meeting said, here's a chance for you to decide whether or not we should have a community center, I'm going to throw that one out, which will cost N number of dollars, or a sewage system, which will cost N number, something that,
A hook.
a provocation, I'll use that term. It could be a single issue, it could be two issues, either or.
Very good.
Would that do it as a hook to bring, to use your term, to bring people in? Because
That's a
that
good
issue will
idea.
bring, okay?
Very good, I like that. Hey!
That's startling.
What about
Oh, you're not gonna
saying,
rethink it?
Don't, not at all.
In addition to this, we will be discussing,
I think
No,
you
the
want
other
to be
way
a little
around.
careful
Careful,
about using
exactly.
any particular issue to bring people out.
but, maybe just
Could you
kind of
explain why?
highlight the
It's fine,
Littleton
it's
Common,
fine. Why?
improvements of Littleton Common,
Could you explain why?
possibility of a community center.
Because there are a lot of other issues
Yeah.
that they're going to be asked to weigh in on, and sometimes people don't like that kind of hook because they feel threatened by it.
Well,
I've seen
I-
that backfire. You're
Well,
asking me
look,
my.
In his defense, hang on, let's say you put 5 things down there. He said just mention 2. But again, it's someone to show up and make a statement about something. For whatever reason you get someone to go to a surprise party, you still get them there. Right?
So what would those 5 be?
Have you ever invited people to a party you wish had stayed home?
Wish I had stayed home? Oh, yeah, you wouldn't see my relatives, or ex-relatives. In-laws, is that what you call them? Yeah, relatives too. I got sisters that I don't care for. and
Hey, I
brothers.
tell you guys.
So we're going to cut to the
So
chase. What could it
what would
be?
you say the
And the
five-
same answer with him. It could be the sewer, it could be
Well, Littleton
community
Common.
center, it could be,
Center.
pardon?
Littleton Common rather than sewer, I would say, broad of it.
Well, you can say the whole bloody thing. What difference does it make what you say? Well, it does, but it
Well,
doesn't.
it does.
It's the hook. It's like you said, just to make the shock statement, to get people to come and say, all right, so there it is. And then you show them the brownies.
Depending on the person, you need that. I know some people, I cannot get them to come out unless there's something that goes, oh, all right, I'm really passionate about that. And then there's other people where you're right, you don't want their eye on that ball because they've got the eye on the whole playing field, right? So it's a case by case,
Well, if we kept the
but
list of the
Yeah.
complete, all the elements, but then just called out a few, I don't know.
Okay, well,
What do you
there,
think about that?
good, bad, or
I
indifferent.
have another quick question on,
I don't want us making this decision.
Wait,
I want
I
them.
want you slowing down on this.
Yeah.
You've taken notes, stop there, please.
Yeah.
You gonna make your point?
so, my question is really around outreach to all the different committees that we have in the town, and as to whether or not we are making a concerted effort to make sure that, say, the head of the Council on Aging or the head of the Economic Development Committee are, really got a strong rattling of all of their committee members and their network of people in order to get them there. Because, hey, guys, they're talking about our issue.
Our
We
issue.
need to be there. So is that something that is solidly happening?
Can I say something?
Yes, ma'am.
As far as writing down a bullet point that's going to get somebody there, writing down Littleton Common is not going to do it.
No.
Writing down common sewer or sewer in the common.
Sewer on the common.
The word sewer, Peter's right. That's what's going to hit people.
All right, folks, this
That's
is
it.
not going to
Thank
become a
you.
referendum on any particular hot button item that is in the town. I think that's a recipe for failure, personally. It remains the master plan. The sewer piece may become a piece of the master plan as a tool to accomplish something, whether it's economic
Lost in- it's lost in
development,
translation.
whether it's housing, or whatever. I'm not interested in turning this into a referendum where folks come in armed to the teeth to fight over a particular issue. That's
So they
not
get
what this is
5 minutes
about.
to fight the sewer, and they go over and talk about something else. It's just to get them in the door, and it was just a statement. It doesn't need to be taken so literally.
Those words are very literal, and you know they're very impassioned words in this town, Peter. I don't understand why we would want to offer a confrontational environment at this public forum. It's to do the entire master plan and all the elements of the master plan. Okay? The sewer is but one tool that could possibly implement or serve to implement pieces of the master plan. There's a sewer committee.
It's on its own track anyway.
My
Yeah.
whole point was just saying, if you're going to put on a flyer 5 bullet points of things that could be discussed, not to write Littleton Common, because it doesn't bring anybody in. It didn't bring me in. I haven't been to any of them
It
yet.
didn't bring you in, but it did bring in a boatload of people that went out there, boatload of
Okay.
45 people that did go out in inclement weather and walk around the common. So folks that are interested in certain areas certainly
Boatload
can
of
participate.
45.
Yeah, I know, it's a small boat.
Okay.
Oh, that's fine. I'm just.
All right,
There
I'm
you go.
sorry I brought that up. I'm sorry I offended you. I'm sorry.
Are you okay if we
Did that
back,
get you?
okay, you did bring it up, now, are you okay if we back off of that a bit?
Please
folks?
do, knock yourself out. Let's keep
Other
moving.
people, thoughts? All right, thank you.
I did want to suggest, though, maybe just the signage. I don't know if we've been using the electronic signs for the last couple of public sessions, either road signs we use for construction on the road and stuff. Can we use those?
If somebody has the opportunity to coordinate those, that would be awesome.
Well, I know Rich and I are down for signs, but I've had literally nothing to do with them before, but they magically happen. So if there's something I should be doing, please let me know. But as far as the electronic side, that was in operation before, right? For the announcing these meetings?
Talk about the middle school?
Yes.
electronic sign?
Well, plus, there's the one that we have on wheels there that they,
Right, that one I think is the most effective one, because it
Right.
progresses the town.
Yeah,
So
work
now,
with-
what do people need
with
to
Jim
do?
Clyde for that.
Who wants to take that on?
well, I think Rich and I are on that, so if you would just
Yeah.
remind me to get on that, I'll look into that.
That's great. And so Gary, if you have another couple of signs that you know of, then
Yeah, I'm the guy.
that would be wonderful. Thank you. Appreciate that.
So what was the response to Anna's question, though, about the committees?
Actually, we had the liaison list. Each of you was assigned to a couple different boards and committees, and you were supposed to be coordinating with them on that. I'll resurrect that list and send that out. Thank you.
Are you ready to talk about other master plans? Yes, we are. Go ahead. Okay, so we provided this with Groton, which was just a planning exercise, so to speak, not an implementation.
Yeah, Groton just took a different
Yeah,
approach.
that's okay.
It didn't hit you right
No,
away.
I'm just highlighting it
Yeah,
for folks.
fine.
Arlington took a different approach, more along the lines of what we're interested in. And we discussed the comprehensive plan that Lincoln had, which is, it perhaps dug a little bit deeper than we anticipate going ourselves.
Yeah.
So we kind of got opposite ends of the spectrum and in the middle. But that, from each of them, I think some folks highlighted a few things that they thought they would useful from each of them, and not so useful also
Okay, that's fine.
as we go forward.
Sure.
We provided us with a table of contents, and I think, a proposed table of contents, that offers us a point of departure, I think, for this discussion. So what I'd like to do, folks, is we go through it, and I'm just going to take us down, and when we get down to chapter 2, land use, we almost answer all the questions for the rest of the chapters also.
Right, because it's
It's
a
a
structure.
formatting
thing,
issue,
just
so
the-
it's structural.
That's for readers. That's for the sake of the reader.
No, I know, but it's for our conversation.
Understood.
Scope.
Yep.
So, the front matter, okay, gotcha, okay, we want to cover, who's going to design the cover? What's your plan to design it? Because certainly, Melissa brought up a very good point when you showed us the Westford plan early on in this process. It was a very readable, it was a very attractive plan, it grabbed her attention very quickly. So it's probably something we're interested in also, is to not necessarily duplicate or replicate perhaps, but at least approach.
Yeah, you've already got Westfords, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
They tried that as like almost day one,
Yeah.
as an example. So with that in mind, so some of this is just pure, who's actually doing the work now. So the cover page, who are you going to use to design the cover page?
Well, I always just design them and usually get feedback from people.
All right. When can we anticipate seeing that?
Not until we get the draft recommendations in your hands. So it's going to be, that meeting the 25th, we're talking about getting draft recommendations to you second week in February, is that the date? I'm not even going to think about this cover until after we get those recommendations out the door.
Because, and I'm not disagreeing with you, so I'm not saying.
I have a picture in mind for
Yeah,
it.
I'm not saying I want to change that around yet. Well, in my mind, it is an attractive thing, you know, yeah, don't judge a book by its cover, got that, but it's useful to at least have people pick the book up.
Yep.
All right. Everybody content there?
Yeah, I have a comment, but it's more general rather than
Okay.
to the cover page, so I don't know if you want to hear it now or later.
Can you save it to a chapter?
Sure.
Okay, because I just want to get through this front matter first.
There's a great backstory to the Westford plan, I'll tell you someday.
So the title page, again, something needs to be attractive, but obviously it's the title. Table of contents, it's a list. The list of tables, the same thing. The list of maps, acknowledgements, they are the abbreviations, and the chronology. So this front matter is described here. Is everybody content with it?
Yeah, and all I was trying to say about abbreviations and chronologies, you
I
can
know
put
what you
those
mean.
back in the appendix if you want.
But you just got a head nod from everybody. Here's what I say to folks, when you get a yes, stop talking.
Okay.
Chapter 1, introduction. So it's going to be the purpose and scope of this. You say purposes. Does the master plan truly have purposes or a purpose?
Usually has more than one purpose.
All right. Explain, please.
Well, it is typically used by local officials for a policy framework. It's used by landowners who might be thinking about what to do with their property. It should be looked at by developers who are trying to think about what they want to propose in a community that may or may not fly. It should be used in terms of putting together a capital budget and what the priorities are for that, because capital investment relates to growth management decisions. So
All those uses you described, we agree 100%. Mike Fonell, I think, said it best, and it was very early on. The purpose of this is to provide an overarching document of guidance, or a guidance document. I think a purpose statement is very short, concise.
Oh, yeah.
It's not a list of items, and there's one purpose for this.
Okay.
What do you folks think? Mike, you want to draft how you said that and, give it to Judy?
I can do that.
Thank you.
I can try to remember
That
how
work?
brave
I
I
mean,
was.
you guys are the
Sorry.
pros. I know, and it's fair, but certainly, your input is, absolutely critical to us, paying enough for it. But it's just silly. I understood what you said. I see that as uses, not the purpose. Okay, community participation, so there you're just going to talk about
What
the
we
various
did,
things.
you
we did.
guys, the community meetings,
Okay.
yes.
The overarching themes, I think I understand what you got there. The vision we've done and the master plan goals that we've laid out.
Yeah.
Okay, chapter 1, is everybody content?
Yes.
Okay. All right, now, land use, chapter 2, Paul, I promise you, when we get to the chapters, right?
Okay, all right. Since in this day and age, probably, I would guess better than 50% of the people who are going to review this document are going to review it online, we should start thinking in terms of it just as one of these printed documents, and that some of the content should be presented as video, and I think rather than, and I'm conscious of gives and takes. If we're throwing out something new, then take something back, cut something else out that we're going to, pages of data, and for each topic area, whether it's the chapter summary, that could be read while a video shows some of the specific places in town being referenced, and I would think for a couple of, topics per chapter area, it might be more appropriate or more compelling to have a, click-on video rather than just a still photo or a written description. And not everything lends itself to that, but I think a piece of each one of those chapters is, it's the way people get their information now. And why would we not do it that way is the way I'm thinking, rather than why are we producing the same type of document we've been doing for forever.
Who's going to do that?
What, just the video piece of it? Well, I don't know, I won an election last year doing it on a phone I bought that day, and here you go, fine, go walk around with a camera,
We could make it happen.
Yeah.
Collectively.
I would leave that to you, I think.
Well, okay.
No.
We can certainly do that, but I just,
I think it's a fine idea, it's just, but I would just say, I think that's something that we would be looking to you to help pull together.
Yeah, there's a lot there, and I'm going to ask you, because when you have me, look how she backed away.
No, I'm making sure.
Well
it's each
done.
other.
Maybe come up with a bit of a game plan.
yeah.
As to some of the, so for each of these chapters, that.
I'm not even suggesting changing any of the topics or whatever the approach is, just for some of the information that you're gonna provide.
No, what I was going to suggest is you suggest some
Film
points
here,
of areas
film
that should
there.
be
Yeah.
filmed. And then let's look at maybe sharing the
That's
responsibility.
driven somewhat by the suggestions though, too, but I'm anxious to get feedback on this too, it's just an idea that occurred to me.
But as we start scoping it out,
Yeah.
as to, maybe it's a bridge too far, or it's a bridge.
Well, I don't know, I mean,
do
do you want the standard written report that will go unread by 99% of the population, or do you want the video that'll be seen by maybe 5% of the
Well, I'm agreeing
population?
with
I'd
you.
rather-
I'm agreeing with you, and I'm
Okay.
trying to sort
All
through
right.
how we might do it,
All right.
okay?
Yeah.
So I definitely appreciate that a lot of people will be looking online. I would just caution that we don't want to go too far that way. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at Imagine Boston 2030. The draft plan is just out.
No.
And it's all to be looked at online. You cannot print it out.
Well, I didn't
And it-
I didn't
it's-
suggest
and it's
that,
actually
I consciously
not
did
at
not
all
suggest that.
user-friendly.
No, I know.
So you got to sort of balance that out.
Yeah, well, as I said, I would, you could even stick to what you were gonna write for your chapter summaries and have that as a voiceover with the video showing some of the things, rather than just having people try to imagine them.
There's a
It's
quality
supplemental.
issue.
It's not
Right.
replacement.
Maybe we can do after, like we produce the document and we can I don't know, a high school project or something like that, and
Right.
the kids.
Wouldn't be that hard to do, honestly, I don't think. I mean,
Don't need to be like immediately.
no, but I would bet you if that's included in it, that'll be the part that people are gonna skin through it and they're gonna click on each of the videos.
Absolutely, for sure.
That's how it works.
That's right.
But
I guess I'm respectful of having write scopes of works and have to execute scopes of works. I don't think we asked for that.
No.
In terms of, in their scope, in their contract. So I'm respectful of the fact, I don't think we, that's an additional element that, I think it could be nice, maybe we should have thought of that 9 months ago, but I don't think we.
Well, Gary, I was conscious of that, and two things I said there. One is we could just take some of the existing text here and have it read as a video, and if these folks aren't going to produce a video, we can do that piece of it. It doesn't even require anything more, complicated than a phone camera. And then two is if it means giving back some of the other verbiage that, is essentially filler, then I'm happy for that trade-off.
we got pros in town, LCTV.
Yeah.
Maybe contact Mike Crory. And sitting at this table, at 0 airspeed 1G, we can come up with brilliant ideas easily.
Mark.
But I say Mike and Mark. But maybe work with him a little bit and see what it might take to scope it out. And I know it's, like you said, easy enough to go out with a camera, but most of us are not really good at that. We take cute little home pictures of our little children and our grandchildren, and they all look cute because they're our kids. But then you show other people, go like, whoa. So,
No, with my kids.
of course not with your children.
Just saying.
So that's what I'd suggest there.
Okay, good looking.
That works.
I will
Okay.
certainly pursue it, but I
All right, let's
would
move on
hope that
then.
it was a little more.
I'm going to say something that's probably very unpopular, but I
Yeah.
feel compelled.
You gonna say my kids are ugly?
No, dear, I'm not going to
All
say
right.
that.
Then
The
whatever you
planner
say
in
is-
me can't resist. These documents do serve multiple uses. One is, if your land use policies that you adopt pursuant to the plan are challenged in court, you need to have documentation. A judge will not look at a video. No, I'm just,
Nobody's, look,
I just
for the
finish?
third time, I know, I've never once stated do this instead of doing the text, okay? So let's,
Supplemental.
I'm just,
Supplemental,
yeah,
an
if it's
alternative.
supplemental, I think it's fine. But there's also a legal use of these documents, and we just need to make sure that we keep that in view as well.
Good points, thank you. What I would ask, and Paul's one sparked my mind to it, hyperlinks.
Yeah.
Yes.
So strongly, you will be doing that? Okay,
Yes,
great.
absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get then to how these chapters are laid out.
Yep.
The purpose and scope seems to make sense as to what the chapter's going to discuss and the scope of the information that we expect to find in there. We're going to skip the sustainability portion for the moment. The relationship to the master plan goals, that would seem to make sense. And there's an opportunity, Paul, I believe, as to how you get that cross-pollination, so to speak, and you pop out of the silos. So if we're looking at land use and we get to the master plan goals, some of those goals, they not even use the word land use, but there's a linkage there.
That's right.
So what do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Key findings, so that's going to be a bullet list of things that have come up through these various forms. Are you going to identify where it came up to? So let's say a particular item came up only in the our second meeting. I'm going stupid on words here, I apologize to you. Pick one. The first forum that we had, public forum. And that's the only place it occurred, you put public forum number 1, but, it occurred in all of the forums or all of the meetings, or it only came up in charrette number 1. So certainly some little common things might have only come up in charrette 1, but then certainly the comments, one of those things may have come up in many different items. Is that worthwhile as to where it was identified from?
Not in the key findings list, but in the narrative in the chapter,
Okay.
yes.
Everybody okay with that?
Yeah. It's
Okay.
the findings and policy, you want to just keep that short, because if people never want to
Okay.
read the rest of the document, they've
Say
got
yes.
those first few
Say
pages.
yes.
And I think to clarify, the key findings are existing condition findings, correct?
They could be. I mean, yeah, they're facts,
So
they're
they're-
facts.
they're
They're findings of
facts.
fact, is what they are.
Fair
So
enough.
they're not necessarily opinions.
Okay, so now the key policy recommendation. How do you approach that? I see you
Those
say
are going to be
bullet
the,
list, I got that.
that will come out of the recommendations document that you'll get on the 10th of February.
How
There'll be
about the-
recommendations from every chapter, so
here.
what's the matter, Peter?
So,
I'll ask you something afterwards.
Okay. There'll be recommendations in every chapter that form the framework for the implementation program.
Just an example how it'll be presented.
In the beginning of the chapter, just as a bullet list. just as key recommendations that get fleshed out later in the
So
chapter.
put sidewalks across the Great Road in the common area.
So the recommendations aren't going to be in the chapter 1 introduction area in terms of these are the overarching recommendations?
We can do that. I've had different towns have different views about that. It's fine to put them there. I don't mind adding them, but I'm also trying to be sensitive to length. So, that introduction could be easily reformatted as an executive summary and include the recommendation. I
That's
don't have a problem
actually
with that.
something that I was wondering about, because when somebody either has a short time frame or short attention to the overall plan, we want them to walk away with what it is they need to walk away with. And my concern is that if the recommendations are only in each section, folks might forego looking at the big picture, so to speak.
I agree. What I envisioned, however, coming out of all, which is fine, I don't mind adding them, but what I was envisioning coming out of all of this is an executive summary that is essentially chapter 1 in the implementation program. And when you put those two together as a separate document, you've got the whole picture.
Right. So,
It's a standalone. Becomes a
but it's
standalone.
different from this document.
It would be pulled out of this document.
Yeah.
You basically take chapter 1 and the implementation program and put them in a new document. Say, this is the executive summary for the Littleton Master Plan. Then you've got all of it together.
So if we just think of paper for the moment.
We did that in Westford, exactly what we did in Westford.
So you're going to have master plan as a standalone document, and then there'll be a standalone document that is the executive summary.
Well, it's
and-
easier to reprint it, it's easier to reproduce. If you need copies of the document, it's a lot easier to reproduce an executive summary. So if the executive summary has what is chapter 1 and the implementation program, that's a smaller document than having all these intervening chapters.
I'm just not used to the executive summary being a separate document from the documents.
Well, that's why
Littleton.
that's part of why Lincoln's plan is so long, because their beginning of, the executive summary is at the beginning of that document. Most towns treat it separately, and there's a reason for that, actually. Part of it is pagination. They don't want the executive summary to be part of the pagination of the main document, so.
Maybe I'm thinking differently. An ES is no more than 5 pages for this. It's this, the operative word, summary.
No, I understand that, but it's usually more than 5 pages. 12, maybe, probably.
Write smaller.
All right, we don't need to fall on a sword on that.
You don't
one
need to
right
worry
now.
about that time, but that was what was in the back of my
But
head,
does that answer
so.
what you needed?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that somehow there was a brief document that could be had throughout this, and that didn't look like it was going to happen.
And so effectively, you're talking about, you get the long version or the short version? If someone wants to find the master plan, they can get.
The long version is the one you take to court. The short version is the short version is the one you take to town meeting. The long version is the one you take to court.
Okay, so the existing conditions and trends, we had the draft of that already.
Right,
And that'll be cleaned up.
right.
The issues and opportunities. So here's where we really start to get into some meat, that and the policy recommendations.
These are the pieces that are to come out of the 25th, and you'll see most of it in the document on the 10th.
How do you anticipate presenting those? So, okay, we got that area, issues and opportunities. How might that look?
Well, these are going to be, you're going to get them as a whole document. Like you did the inventory and existing conditions, it was one document broken into sections. Well, each one of those sections is now going to get pulled out and put into a separate chapter, to which will be added the issues and opportunities and the recommendations. Do you follow what I'm saying? So what you're going to get from us on February 10th is another document that's got all of them together. But in the master plan, they get pulled out and put into each
And
chapter.
I'm looking at that, but, so issues and opportunities, it's just going to be a list?
It's a section. It usually is done in bullets. Westford has this. If you have the Westford plan, you can even take a look. But most of them are sort of like, it's just issues and opportunities. And here's like 5 issues that this town faces, whatever they may be. And they're just sort of treated in a narrative form. Here's the problem you've got, and here are things that are opportunities that may assist you in addressing this issue, or here are threats that are in the way that you need to be aware of. Whatever those things are about that particular issue, then form the basis for the recommendation. So those sections flow together seamlessly. They really are seamless. They're inseparable. It's like, you got to get something between recommendation and inventory.
With you. So now, how do you anticipate the policy recommendation being worded? Give us an example, please. And very short, it doesn't need to be,
Didn't we have one in here?
exhaustive.
Policy, right on the first page of this one, in policy, increase sidewalk coverage and number, I'm sorry, I'm going back to the draft
Page
strategies
one.
document.
Page 1.
Apologize. It's electronic, I'm still catching up. That helps. Go ahead. I'm sorry, back to this.
It's okay. So policy is increasing sidewalk coverage and number of sidewalks in Littleton or crosswalks in Littleton to connect residential neighborhoods with activity centers. So a specific action step, that's the policy. The recommendation is create a construction and maintenance fund for sidewalks and crosswalks. That's what goes in the action plan.
Folks content with that construct?
Sounds fair, got a problem, how to fix it, keep going.
Good. All right, thank you. All right, so that's all the other chapters.
Right, they're
Talking
all
about formatting
organized.
issue for the most part.
Yeah, we do that just for the sake of the reader. The more the structures, the chapters have a consistent structure, the easier it is on the reader.
Well, no, I'm with you.
Yeah.
It's to guide our conversation here,
Gotcha. I understand.
because we don't need to go through those other 8 chapters now.
Right, being efficient.
So actions are not specifically going to be in a particular chapter.
Policy.
Policy will be, and so the actions, the actions are not by chapter because of the fact that actions can straddle multiple.
Is that the actions end up lending themselves better to the implementation program, which is a chart.
Okay.
Because there's more information, it just works better in a chart. So the chapters have the policy, overarching policy framework for the actions, and then you'll see those policies restated in the action plan.
Correct, I see that.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, I want to skip chapter 10 for the moment, which is the implementation program and the back matter, just close, because I think that's an easy,
Yeah.
that low-hanging fruit that Eric talked about earlier. So the appendixes, that's just administrative stuff, column abbreviation, chronology, glossary, bibliography, list of contributors, photography and illustration credits, and index. Anybody have any issues with the back matter as presented here? You want to add anything, subtract anything? They'll seem fairly administrative and straightforward.
How extensive is, there's a lot of references that you guys have pulled together for the historical information that reside in other documents, other plans, some stuff you pulled from GIS, whatever sources.
Yeah.
I don't think the intent is to repeat any of those things necessarily. What's the?
Like it's cited, they're just cited like in
You're
bibliography.
gonna
like
gonna
that.
cite them, right?
Yeah, they're in footnotes right now, so.
So what are some of the appendices? Give me an example of some of the appendices you envisioned.
Oh, if you, I'll give you an example, and I'm not married to this, it just comes to mind. A lot of communities for the housing section, they would like the list of their subsidized housing developments in the master plan, so it's clear at this point in time what they actually had that was Chapter 40B eligible. They don't want to clutter the chapter on housing with that level of detail. You might say in the chapter we have 500 units, but in the appendix you have to take the actual list.
Okay.
In economic development, you might want to have a list of like your key businesses or something, but you don't want to clutter the chapter with that. It depends on the chapter.
And then what about like demographics?
Demographics tends to go in the housing section. That's usually where we tend to put it.
But if there's some reason to provide more.
Often I see supporting data is put in.
It's
in
mainly
appendices.
supporting documentation, yeah.
Okay.
But not somebody else's plan. I mean, that
That's
just
else's
gets
plan,
listed.
but
as a
supporting
reference.
documentation you use that either you generated as part of this, that you don't want to boggle up
Exactly,
the text.
right.
It's usually in there. And sometimes it can be, some of the appendices can be huge, at least in some things, so.
We don't want to make a huge one.
Are you intending that things be included at whole, or that maybe appendices be just hyperlinked to, that everybody wants to get to them? Because some of the appendices, like I said, could be hundreds of pages.
Well, we're not going to, yeah.
That's not how you
It's
envision
not,
this.
it won't be like that.
Doesn't get like that, okay.
It won't be like that. No, it won't be. I mean, a reference list might be hyperlinked to something else that's online. I always hate to do that because the hyperlinks die and then people
Yeah,
get
that's
frustrated.
right.
But nonetheless, I mean, we would just simply list a reference. We wouldn't include it in the document. The only appendix would be something that we created that is just too big to put in the chapter.
That's what I like.
That's all it is.
Nothing that falls in that category is humongous, relatively.
No,
Okay, all right.
unless you're Lincoln.
All right, we good shape? Fine.
Since I'm fairly new to the committee, I wanted to ask this question to see if it had been discussed in terms of measurable goals, measurable action steps. So taking this particular one about the ease of getting around town and better connected pieces of Littleton with safe and pleasant bike and walking paths, I look at that and I think, well, if we were to have measurable goals, would we need to then put in some kind of a measurable quantitative element to that in terms of saying 3 miles of road? I mean, was there ever any discussion about that the goals
We
or
wouldn't do
action
that in the
steps?
master plan. I think that is really something that an implementation committee in the evaluation process of the plan starts putting that level of detail.
Well, some of the stuff already exists in the town's capital plans, too.
Okay, got
I mean,
it. So that's
that-
where it would
Which,
be.
you know,
Okay, thank you.
could be referenced or integrated,
Yeah.
Right.
yeah, but it does exist.
But adding those performance standards later is a good idea, so that you can evaluate your progress.
But Paul, you introduced that. I think the good point is, all of this is not starting at zero.
Oh, no,
That-
no.
Each is various stages, but they're all somewhere beyond zero. Okay, Chapter 10 implementation program. So, now it's interesting that you actually call that a program, and none of the other chapters use that word.
Right.
So, why don't you explain why you thought that's a good idea, and then take us through this chapter, please.
Yeah, well, I'm just trying to say as true as I can to the statute and what the statute refers to as an implementation program. So that implementation section, if you will, is really, you're taking the policies that are in the chapter, the topic chapters, and you're now trying to put actionable items to them for each action. So for a policy, you might have 3 or 4 actions. You might have 1. But for each action, there's a who's responsible, typically either what goals of the plan or what elements of the plan are addressed by this action, so that you can kind of deal with the silo issue on an action-by-action basis. A sense of what the priority is, and every town handles this differently. I've had towns that wanted to rank them by high, low, medium priority. I've had towns that have wanted to say 1 to 3, 4 to 6, or 7 to 10 years. I mean, everybody does this differently, and we'll do whatever you want. But the point is, there's got to be some way to rank them so that people have a sense of priority. If there's an estimated cost, we would put that in there. Whenever we can, we do that. If we don't have enough data, it's better to say cost estimate to be determined as part of the master plan implementation process, because the worst thing you can do is put a number out there in these plans and then have it turn sour later. So we try to give you the best information that we can. But it's a chart. It's like a landscape-oriented chart. And I think Lincoln's, as frustrating as that plan might be, it's actually a pretty good example of what these things look like. And it's a way, people then, master plan committees tend to pull those out, and it becomes their checklist. So it's what's the action, who's responsible for carrying it out, your comment about primary, what did you call it, OPR versus OCR?
Yeah, Office of Primary Responsibility, collateral
Okay.
responsibility.
Well, I usually say primary responsibility and support needed.
Okay.
So in my non-acronym way, I'm getting at, I think, what you're saying, which is really, there's like other people who have to be involved in order to make something happen, and you try to reflect what those are. So that's what it is. It's really, here's the actions in order to carry out these policies.
All that, I think, is good. The priority piece, how do we want to address that? Because in essence, we're making a recommendation. So it's not just now a plan so much, is we're offering to the town, here's what we're presenting to you all as the first and the last priority, if you will.
Right.
So,
Well, it's about, this is how to do what you said you wanted, and this is the order in which we're saying to do it, right? Saying, that's what the actions are, this is how.
yeah.
And how should we go about this? What should we do first?
Yeah, what's the most important to us, what's the least important?
It wouldn't necessarily be the order, because you might have to skip one thing because you just can't get it done
Yeah.
today.
That's right.
But that doesn't preclude you from doing something else farther down the list.
That's right.
Whether it's resources,
Mike, you're so right.
You need something other else to happen.
Before
For
you-
instance, right, going back to the, you need to get some kind of wastewater treatment in before you can start doing other aspects of development of the common.
Right.
While you're doing that, you can make sidewalks.
Exactly.
Right.
That's fine. Yeah.
No, I completely agree with you. And the other thing that happens too sometimes is that this sort of burning desire a community has that probably is the top priority, the opportunity to fund it doesn't exist. But
Exactly.
a funding opportunity comes up
That's
with
the most
something else
obvious
in the
one, I want
plan.
to use it.
Yeah, and you don't want to just sort of ignore that. So I always try to give people some wiggle room and the ability to recognize that the most important thing to keep a plan from sitting on the shelf is what's the system you have in place to implement it and evaluate that plan in a systematic way. Because you get the opportunity to update that implementation program every year if you choose to do it. That's where some of those priority rankings and so forth can be adjusted and asked you to
I mean,
fix.
whose priorities are they supposed to be?
It'd be us trying to ascertain as best we can.
That's right.
It's what we've learned these last
Right.
2 years. So what I was going to offer, do we want to look at a high, low, high, medium, low? And stop there? Is that enough granulation?
And I think that, I'm okay with that, and I think that the context of it has to be high, medium, and low as we perceived it to be communicated to us through the process. It's not high, medium, and low based on what the planning board thinks, or what this current Board of Selectmen think, or even what this current generation of voters may think. It's what we saw as a snapshot when we took a look at where we thought the town is and where they want it to be, and it could evolve over time.
And you know, in defining the priority, you know, not what the priority may be for a particular area, but defining how we came about assigning a priority level, which you just said I think is critically important, because we've advertised long and far enough now, this is the people's plan, not ours, not the selectmen, not the planning boards, et cetera, but the people's. So that we've derived this to the best of our human ability as to what we've learned over the last 2 years. Understanding, yeah, maybe we made a mistake, but then again, June 1st is there. So that was, we all thought was a high priority, turns out maybe it's not so high, it gets, you know,
Right, because
reevaluated.
I think the list of priorities as we communicate them will immediately start to evolve because of conditions on the ground. And at that point, it's going to be incumbent on the governing bodies to explain to the people who communicated the priority, we understand what you said, but this is why we feel we can or cannot do this right now. And the vast majority of people will be okay with that as long as you're communicating it and you're responding to what they told you.
And acknowledging it.
Yeah, exactly.
And so let's make sure we capture those words then. And somewhere in the implementation program, we describe the meaning of high, medium, and low. If we're all content to go that way?
Yep.
And then how it is that we came to assign those priorities to the various items. Okay. What else we want to, you know, using the table of contents, so to speak, as a guide to this discussion, what else do we want to talk about as far as the structure, if you will, of the master plan?
All right, what do we got for what meetings left to come up here? What meetings are left after January 25th?
We're going to talk about meetings here in a bit.
I just asked a question, I just wouldn't mind having an answer for that for a few seconds. Were there other meetings? I realize that we
Good
were going off
question.
here.
I didn't bring my schedule with me.
All right, well, Marin's looking for the schedule, Peter, we'll continue on, okay? So, deliverable schedule from you all, please.
I'm done.
Gave it to you for the selectmen's meeting last night, and now, I think
Okay.
it was February 10th, we
I
said
put
we
them on
would
here.
get you the draft recommendations. So that's going to come in a document that's kind of like the inventory and existing conditions. It'll be all the recommendations in one document, but they get parsed out later. So they'll be organized by chapter, by section of the plan.
So your forthcoming deliverables, master plan recommendations on 10 February,
Yep.
draft master plan 10 March.
Yep.
Presentation to the planning board, public hearing, which I think is going to involve two things. I'm going to ask you, Peter, on what your thoughts there are in a sec. But March and early April, and then with the final plan approved at that point and presented at town meeting on the 1st of May.
Now, what are you asking town meeting to do?
We're presenting it to them as information. It's an information brief.
Thank you.
And we'll explain very clearly the statute, how the process will work. The planning board has approved it, so we'll take folks all through that.
Yeah, okay,
So that
good.
it's a clear understanding.
Good, good.
And then, what happens on day one of implementation, moving forward, on how they all can continue to participate.
That's good.
Okay, so that gets us to the process of actually how we go about shepherding this the rest of the way to what we just described. Are we missing anything that is important for us to be able to do that?
Should the selectmen attend the planning board presentation?
Oh, I think absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
We should probably invite all the boards
Yeah.
and say, hopefully you've had an opportunity to participate, and, remind them that, we'd like you to, we should probably do that before the 25th too, any board
Yeah.
member, and, here's the last opportunity at a
Oh,
public
yeah.
meeting to come on and have your input, and then please participate, as well on the.
Well, will they
planning
truly
board
get
meeting.
input at that kind of meeting, though? Because
On the
at that point-
25th? Well, all right, well, phrase it however is
Right.
appropriate, but I just think the key point is to specifically connect with
I agree
board
with that
members.
wholeheartedly,
Yeah.
and I think we should make a very formal effort to,
And let them know we're reaching out to them as
Exactly.
board
And
members.
set the room up appropriately so that we can
Right.
handle that. I would hope that we would see
Yeah.
the sustainability committee, the school committee, the
Everybody,
planning board,
light and
zoning,
water,
health, they should all be there, because obviously, this thing, runs right through the roots.
Or at least if they don't come, they know they got invited, and then when they show up at town meeting, they'll.
I think the expectation should be that there will be representation.
Right.
Yeah, send a delegate.
Here's I propose.
Twisting arms,
Is Peter,
Chairwoman.
I'm thinking it's 2 planning board meetings, at the very least. The first one, to encapsulate everything we just discussed and provide a synopsis. A read-ahead to you all be provided before that, so that you actually see the plan. Go in there and provide that synopsis to the community writ large, in a way, at least the governing committee writ large community. And then there'd be the second one where we actually come and ask you to vote on it. What are your thoughts there?
You're asking me something? I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
two meetings.
I'll talk to the chairman, Peter. Don't worry.
Sure.
Um,
I am
I
the
think that
chairman.
makes sense, though, because in one meeting, you can
Yeah, I
get
heard.
input and sign off all at the same time.
Okay.
Right, and the problem, I guess, becomes if we get too close to town meeting to squeeze that all in there. The first public hearing will be April 6th. That's the date that they have set aside to come present to the planning board. So we have that scheduled. It's just,
Yeah, 'cause the other note here is the planning board schedule.
I mean, to find out from the planning board members that we have a quorum and a full board for them to vote later in the month.
Yeah,
We
because
haven't had
April
that.
20th is on as the continuation.
I haven't,
So we were already anticipating that, it sounds like, or somebody was.
right, either the 20th or the 27th, but I haven't had the discussion with the board members on their schedule. The week of the 20th is school break week.
All right. Even the 20th is cutting it close for one day. You think about that. But I think the planning board, we should be there twice. So we don't just go in there, here's the plan, vote on it, please.
Right, oh, yeah.
So,
Yeah,
Do we all-
that's the discussion that we're having.
so you think 6 and 20 works? And I understand what you're saying, you need to check.
Either the 20th or 27th. If you do it the 13th, there's no time.
If we did the 27th, folks, that's, public math 3 days before
Really?
town meeting.
No.
Right, and
That's getting close.
the
Too
call,
close.
it's up to the planning board members whether they're available. I need to have that discussion with them.
All right, what if we back 6 April up? Can we do that?
In
The end of March?
I don't think we can do that. I just don't think we can do that.
You had a conversation about having all the boards come together and have a conversation, correct? We're going to need to have something where we're going to turn around and say, these are the 6 points that we're trying to address at town meeting. And each one of those boards gets a chance to say their implementation of it, how they feel about it, just a quick synopsis. We like this, we like that, we don't like this. Then you have the next meeting that will involve this board again and anybody else who can show up and rely on some of their statements. And then you bring it to the board as a whole, to the planning board, I think is the smartest way to go about it. So that you get a meeting with all the departments, as you had said earlier, but that one needs to be relatively quick. I think that needs to almost be before the 25th or shortly after the 25th of January. So that when we go to those people,
Right.
we have something to really ask them, and they have something to really make a statement about. For me, it's that simplistic.
At a planning board hosted meeting. Right?
At a planning board, at this hosted meeting.
Well, let's.
Or, see, if we're going to be the ones, if the planning board, when I say we, being on the planning board, we got elected to try and do the right thing for the town. If we put everything in front of that planning board that's necessary for them to make a logical vote on, to support to go to town floor, and then explain it to the entire town, I think we got a better chance of really getting something implemented. But you gotta have black and white. There's an awful lot of gray still. For me, I mean, that's all I see. We've spent an awful lot of time talking about words. One word. So that's my opinion. And to PJ's point, have it in line. Get those people out there, get the statements from them, and then have one small, just few points. That's all I'm looking for, personally. Thank you.
Well, they're looking at having the draft to us on the 10th of March.
Right.
Do we want to go before that or afterwards, you think?
I'd like to I'd like to have before. That way, the draft is what we really want implemented, not just the draft. Does that make sense, Marion? You're nodding yes, I'm not sure. Don't do that.
I'm really not sure what you're asking for, Peter. We can have an offline discussion about the information that we'll get and how you'd like the planning board to proceed.
Okay.
Well, the key distinction seems to be either we don't go to the planning board until we have a draft, or whether we go to see them once first, and then go see them after we have the draft.
Well, you got to see them after the draft. without
Obviously, yeah,
question,
that
but-
part is true, but if we're going twice,
Well, I'm just saying, the draft, I mean, a little more than generic.
Yeah.
I mean, more pointed, more, where's my little list that I had that was so, you liked? What'd I do with it? I hit it.
we wrote it, but
Well,
Can
Right, I
can we ask the committees to read to include the draft in their agendas, and then they can discuss for each meeting, for each committee, like sustainability committee, please put this in your agenda and discuss it. And for all the committees, just like,
Yeah, you're right,
Yes.
Renato. Where we're discussing now, though, is do we actually have a meeting with all these various boards before the draft master plan is out, or wait till after? Definitely the draft master plan, once we get something, goes to read aheads to the various boards. We want them to see it.
Are you thinking in terms of once you have the draft recommendations that you would have a meeting with the town boards?
That's one approach, and right now, do we do it before 10 March or after 10 March, that first meeting, so to speak? Peter's of the mind that we should do it before, and with those master plan recommendations, maybe we have enough. Peter, what do you think?
I believe everything is possible.
Well, I think the draft recommendations are just draft recommendations for us to chew on, and they're not in a position, in effect, they're not ready for prime time yet, right? We're trying to get feedback on that.
Well, we would need feedback from you guys anyway, so.
Correct. So are we ready to share them with the other boards? I'm thinking not.
But you're going to have to be, because we're going to be coming back with a draft master plan on March 10th.
Right, we need to get your comments pretty quickly.
Right.
Is it fair, I think this is what you were saying, PJ, after the 25th forum and after you're able to consolidate a little bit of that, then is that kind of crystallized enough to be able to have something concrete to go, okay, this is what we want you to review, but it's still in a moldable shape. This is going to be influencing the final product. This is indicative of what you will see in the final product.
That's what the February 10th document is, it's the recommendations.
The February 10th, okay, so then maybe, after February.
February 10th?
Yeah.
That's where we're going to be giving you the
But like Gary
recommendations.
said, you might want to review those before, if you can do that very
But we
quickly.
can't do another revision of them.
Right.
We can't.
No.
No.
Yeah, to be clear, February 10th is.
That document gets reviewed by everybody.
To be clear, February 10th is when you
Do you want to do for
deliver.
everybody at that point?
We have to.
To be clear,
I know you-
February 10th is when you will deliver this to us. All right, with that in mind, if they're delivered on February 10th, when do we want to have a meeting?
PDQ.
Because we want to read them first.
How many pages you envision this?
I can't-
5?
I don't know. I mean, I really just, right now, I don't know. I don't want to commit to a page like right now.
Yeah, but
Jeez, I
100,
gotta laugh out of almost the whole, wow.
it's less than 100, so at least we scoped it a bit.
It's not going to be 100 pages, no.
Double spaced, big letters.
Pictures, lots of pictures.
Pictures, lots of
Yeah.
pictures.
Do you have a calendar call up, Maren?
You want me on that wall.
February 10th is a Friday,
Yes, that's right.
20th is a holiday.
All right, if the 10th is the Friday, like you say,
Monday's a holiday.
20th.
Monday the 20th.
Monday,
Monday the
20th. Oh, I'm just
Right.
pointing
the
out.
14th is Valentine's Day.
But we meet on Tuesdays. We meet on Tuesdays here.
I know, that's the 14th though this year.
Yeah, we
Right.
get chocolates and a steak dinner. Mess with that day.
That's true. Actually, yeah, I mean, Eric makes a good point. Right now, we have a meeting with you guys on the 7th, but I'm wondering, it doesn't make any sense for us to be here on the 7th if we're turning the recommendations over to you on the 10th.
I agree. Do you want to move that to the 15th?
Just trying to get you back on track.
It's a Wednesday.
I like that you're respecting Valentine's.
It's my wedding anniversary.
That's
The
right.
15th?
It is. Yes, I'll be here on the 15th. I mean, I got through the big one last year, so it's fine.
It's just-
Oh, your first anniversary?
No. I mean, I could be here on the 15th.
Are you
I don't
sure?
know. Yes, oh, yeah.
Okay, 15th February, everybody?
Yes.
Okay, so the 7th is moved to the 15th.
So what's the 7th is moves to the 15th.
And the intent is we providing comments at that meeting? Or what is?
So
Yeah, we
we get it
will-
on the 10th. That gives us 5 days, 20 pages a day.
It's like being in school.
All right, so you present it to us on the 10th, Maren distributes to us some later in the 10th, and we read it over the weekend. And prepare to discuss it on the 15th. All right,
Is that going to be in multiple boards again, or is this discussed in this?
that first one, I think, just us. And then, very shortly thereafter.
Can we get that copy to the heads of this, all the other
I'll post it.
departments?
Well,
Or the department? Well, the
More
reason,
information, what's the
It'll all be
downside?
posted on the website.
Yeah, it's
All right.
public information.
good. So they get more days to read it.
Here's how to advertise that, what do you think? You distribute it to all the boards in town too, on the 10th when we get it, and tell them that on the 15th, we will be having our discussion over it, and they're welcome to come.
Good
Yes,
call.
I think it's a great idea.
There you
Then,
go.
We actually have very
Now you're
formal,
cooking
though,
with Chris.
outreach at a planning board meeting.
Yeah.
But it can't be in room 303 or even 103, I don't think.
Think that
Because
many
if
will
we're
show up?
successful, we'll have many more people that can sit in that room. So we'll have to do a bit of a plan as to where we want to have the meeting.
This room
Yeah, there's
might be the
nice.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Open up the cells.
Right.
Or when you distribute for comments from other committees, if the liaisons could help with that communication, I'm happy to send it, but, you know, if you're
True to
gonna
help
follow-
communicate, but as far as just electronic to the chairman of each,
Yeah.
or admin troop, whoever they have.
Do you want to start that meeting a little earlier than you usually do, or is it just not possible for people to start sooner? I don't know what your work schedules are.
Yes, so it's on the 15th?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can certainly start earlier.
I mean, it might be kind of a nice, get pizza, get a work session, do a work session.
We're gonna need some
Huh?
time. We're gonna need some time.
No, I know, yeah, I agree with
that's
you.
why I agree
That's
with
right.
you.
No, You are agreeing with me.
I think it's gonna be longer than 2 hours.
Yeah, I mean, think about it as a work session. If you can do that, then that'd be great.
I completely agree. The only thing running through my mind is when to start it. Suggestions?
Town of Damon?
Yeah.
Six.
What day is that going to be?
It's a Wednesday.
It's still the 15th, not
15th.
not Wednesday.
Yeah.
Go for 6 PM?
Yeah.
So
What day of the week is it?
it's a Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Wednesday's trial.
Wednesday's job,
Yeah.
rocking his head about.
Yeah, everything's good.
Right, then the 10th, we have a draft.
Yep.
I would like, after we've consolidated our thoughts on the 15th, is to be able to speak to the planning board and others that would like to attend that. And I'll use the word synopsis, as to where we're at, what's happening in the next few weeks, and what we're going to be asking the planning board to do. So when is the March meeting for the planning board?
First Thursday in March, is that what, the second?
Yep.
Third Thursday, you said?
First.
Oh, first, oh, that does us no good. Oh, 1st March, yeah. So Peter, does that work, 2 March? To be on the agenda for you guys, 30 minutes?
The boss says yes.
All right, so planning board meeting on 2 March. And Judy, for RKG's representation, I think one of you all, I don't know if we need the entire team. Folks?
Yeah, I know, we wouldn't, we just,
Right. Why, are they chewing up their money, or are we running out of
Not
money?
confusion. No, we can just, I mean, there's a point at which we have to just sort of take this in and say, it's our responsibility here at this point, so.
And I think there could be better use of the time than they will be at the meeting.
Right.
So, the burning the hours is not the biggest deal in the world to me. It's a concern, but the proper use or the best use of your time is the more important concern.
Good call. Frog.
Okay, so if I'm understanding correctly, comments on the issues and opportunities and recommendations by the 15th of February, then you are then working to update the draft master plan by March 10th, but there's a planning board meeting, which is more of a presentation, I guess, on the 2nd of March?
They ask me.
I'm just opening it, making sure I'm getting nods
The
from.
planning board hearing is the 6th of April, right?
Yeah. An update to the planning board on
Yeah, 6 of
March 6th.
March 2nd.
March 2nd is a planning board meeting.
I'm sorry, okay. Got it.
And then draft master plan on March 10th, and is it still open for comments since it's a draft master plan, but it's more for the general public? Or how, what is that, when I say draft, so context that you don't want to comment, but I know you're going to get comments.
Oh, so I don't know if we talked about this as a group, but, you know, it's pretty typical to have maybe a 2-week comment period where the public is sending us in comments, similar to what we did with the inventory, when we had the comment matrix.
Yeah.
So we can potentially set something like that up too, so that not only you all are commenting on the draft plan and department heads and boards, but also the public.
That's what I wanted to understand and clarify.
So did you define it? May 10, starting May 10?
March 10th.
March 10, so.
Ready to go live March 10th.
Yep.
There's only one reason to have public input, and that's to use what's inputted. If we wait for 2 weeks after the 10th of March, how much of that input are we going to use?
I think you want to have a chance, people to have a chance to comment on it.
I agree, that's not my point,
Okay.
is I think that's too late. So we got
It goes to
to
the
come earlier.
24th of March.
And almost to the mind is to when we get the draft recommendations,
Yeah.
and that's the start of the public comment
Right.
period.
The 10th of February.
No, don't, you misunderstand me. Give them 2 weeks from the 15th, because it still gives us an opportunity to incorporate it. In fact, that ends up, we will have had 2 weeks of comment before we even go to the planning board. And we can update very much real time what it is we speak to the planning board on the 2nd, and then take their inputs and move forward. So that, and I gotta get back to that page.
Just a 2-week comment period.
We're ready late March, early May for planning board vote.
The only thing is, it's not a complete draft.
Don't say that's the 10th of March, that you're getting.
Yes.
Right.
But we're gonna ask for public comment on the recommendations. Because 10 March to have the draft master plan and to have various iterations, I don't see that happening.
Goes to the 24th.
That draft has to be fairly well tight.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, Peter, I'm confused because they're asking for comment by the 15th so that they can get to a draft master plan by March 10th. If you're asking for public comments that are due after the 15th, how do those get incorporated into the 10th?
The draft master plan's already going to be in development.
Right.
Like, for example, the whole beginning part, the inventory existing
Yeah,
conditions,
that's
comments we already got on that. We're already putting those into the document. So we're not
Understand.
going back on those.
Right.
So-
But February 10th is the date that we were getting the draft document, correct?
The draft recommendations.
Draft recommendations, not the draft document.
No, the
March
draft
10th.
document is March 10th.
So let me go through dates, see if we go concur. As just stated, 10th February, Littleton receives from RKG the draft recommendations.
Yep.
On the 15th of February, we will all be prepared to discuss them. We will have invited various other people to come and listen to our discussion and offer input. We will begin on the 15th, a 2-week public input period to receive those inputs. That'll take us to the 25th of February. That gives us 2 weeks to pull anything that works and should be included now in the draft master plan that you'll be presenting on the 10th of March. So that'll give the RKG a 2-week period to incorporate those. And on the 10th of March, we have the draft master plan.
Well, you're missing, it's dated to, right, March, after that 2-week period, we have the March 2nd meeting with the planning board,
Yes.
right? Okay.
Yeah.
And that's
Not
before the-
dismissing that,
all right.
I'm trying to work us through a public, inputs from the public.
Okay, but
That was the
that's,
conversation.
that will also.
And the 2 March, will with the planning board, we'll have that meeting, yes.
Right.
Okay, so the draft master plan arrives here on the 10th of March. When do we meet again?
7th of March is our scheduled date.
Again, that's probably a bad date.
Hmm.
Do we want to move that to the 14th of March?
I could be here on the 14th of March. Yeah, I can do that.
Instead of the 7th?
Yeah, does that make sense, folks? So we are changing that.
What's the intent on the 14th of March?
That we will have read the draft plan at that point, and we'll have an opportunity for a fine tuning and get it back. And you would anticipate giving us a final, quote, the final, on which date?
Hold on. Planning board hearing is on the 6th. That's the date we, okay. So it seems to me as though that the final, we're done. Well, you can do this in one of two ways. You can say the final has to be in your hands before town meeting. So the planning board has their public hearing on the 6th, you have a 2-week comment period. We address what needs to be addressed and turn around that final document literally the day of town meeting. The other way you can do it, which is, I don't remember how Westford, I may be wrong about this. One of the towns I worked in, the planning board adopted, might have been Dedham, planning board adopted the plan or approved the plan. There were some comments at town meeting. The plan was already done, and so they asked us to do like an addendum. To respond to some questions that came up at town meeting. So we literally inserted an addendum at the beginning of the document because the plan was done. Another town didn't actually treat it as done until after town meeting, and that was Lincoln. So it was actually treated as a draft all the way through until they got through town meeting. So I think it's just a question of how do you want to do it, because my assumption was that we would have the draft, that would be done for town meeting.
What do you folks think?
We're not talking about two-week periods now, are we? I would assume if we're having a 2-week public comment period after the 15th on the recommendation, that's a substantive piece. How it later gets put into language shouldn't invite another 2-week comment period.
It shouldn't. I'm just saying that, but the public hearing, Eric is right. I mean, on a public hearing, typically you do have a comment period associated with it, so.
All right, well, we're doing that on the recommendation phase of it, right? I mean, unless somebody objects, I mean, there's just no need to have both of them.
I hear you. People do expect a comment period, and sometimes the comments,
Well, like
once they
I
can
said-
see the whole document now, something dawns on people that they don't like the way something's worded, you
Well,
know.
if we're going to do a second one, then the first one's pretty much meaningless.
No,
yeah,
because that first one is going to, that's a substance one. I mean, you may say to us, we don't like recommendation 25, take it out. But if it's in the draft master plan, because we haven't been told to take it out, it just becomes a lot more disruptive to the document to have that stuff in there. So that
We
discussion
approach it this
about the
way.
recommendations is
Is
key.
we have an advertised period based on the recommendation on the 15th of February. If on the 11th of March, someone drops a brilliant idea on us, and we go, we have time to incorporate it, or we go with that addendum process
Yeah,
as described.
Dedham did, yeah.
And that's how we can address that. But I agree with you, multiple public comment periods, I don't think help us.
Well,
That we get inputs helps, but.
Well, I don't think it's fair to the public to just think that the only chance they can fight on this is a 5-day period to talk about the to comment on the recommendations period. I don't think most people are going to have any
Give them 2
clue.
weeks, not 5 days.
But still, it's just the recommendations piece, it's not the overall report without the overall context, it's just the recommendations. They haven't seen the background. I don't think that's fair. I think they should have a chance to comment on the overall document, however we do it.
That's fine, whatever. I mean,
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend planning board opening a public hearing on the master plan without taking input and considering it and having the opportunity to make some minor revisions.
We had gone down the road of having the planning board approve the plan before town meeting. Do we want to punt?
No. If we're getting that plan on the 10th, then we do have a 2-week period before the April 6th hearing date, it can be done. It's just, it's just a posting thing, right? So,
And it's an opportunity for people to also become aware of the plan, so that it doesn't hit them on the head on May 1st. It's an opportunity to get it out there.
And again, at a year of these meetings, we had no participation virtually. So this is the first time they're going to be this in your response. They need some time. And I think 2 weeks is more than enough. There it is. It's in the thing. Here's what you're going to see May 1st.
Right, if we use the 2 second...
Participate or perish.
2 second, his words. If we use the 2 March planning meeting as another 2-week period, that takes to 16 March, and we will, right now have planned a meeting on the 14th of March. What's the utility of having the meeting before that 2 weeks is up?
oh, we had one on the 11th, no? No, March, I'm on April.
It's semantics right now,
Yeah.
but I mean, the timeframe given to the population to read and understand and make input, I think that's well documented, correct? We're good.
True, but we've extended the period to 16 March. When do we get
Well,
together
they haven't,
again?
the plan is not published until March 10th.
March 10th is what we.
Not March
I'm
10th.
sorry, my bad.
That's all
It's
right.
February 10th it becomes public.
So which means the
No, that's just the
24th.
recommendations.
Well, the recommendations are February 10th. The whole draft is March 10th.
Okay. Well, I think once we get the March 10th, or February 10th one is going to be,
Yeah, you can use that.
I think that one.
Make sure it's not a permanent marker. I've made that mistake before.
I think we got to get together shortly after that public comment period ends.
I was agreeing with you on the April 6th planning board public hearing. Leave us the option for a second continued public hearing, either the 20th or 27th, depending on member availability. But if some changes need to be done between the 6th and the 20th, we have the option of having those changes.
I'll rewrite the whole thing. Maybe some.
That was my point. I can't recommend the planning board open a public hearing without the ability to take comments and make changes.
And again, it's another opportunity for
Yeah.
people to learn about it.
Right. So right now, the scheduled planning board meeting in April is the 6th. We've received the plan on 10 March. 2 weeks gives us 24 March. So sometime between 24 March and 6 April, we should get together as a team, so that we've taken public inputs and have adopted them as necessary, so we're prepared to speak to the planning board on the 6th.
Perfect.
Is that yes?
So
So,
saying yes a
Week of
long
27th.
time, I don't know.
Yes.
Yes.
so do we want a master plan update steering committee meeting on the 28th of April? It's a Tuesday.
March.
28th of March, thank you very much.
Instead of the 14th, PJ, or in addition?
No, additive,
Yeah.
28th.
Does
28th.
this look correct up on the board?
Eric, we'd open it up for public comment on the 10th, not the 14th of March. So the comment period ends on March 20th.
14th. Draft.
No.
One month.
That's February. February's good.
March.
March. So the March 10th is draft master plan ready. 2 weeks is from March 10th to March 24th for the comments to end. That's March 24th, not the 28th. And we'll meet 28th.
On the 28th.
And a master plan update meeting on the 28th of March.
You guys type that up and send it to I have it written down, but.
Well, just to be clear, the meeting on February 15th is Also inviting the other committee members?
Right.
Okay.
And department heads too should be
And department heads, okay.
All right, we want to put a couple more dates up there. 20 or 27, 20 or 27 April, yes, to get a final planning board vote. With preference
20th
by
or the
the
27th of April, planning board.
20th or 27th.
They have to be asked.
The preferred date is the 20th.
Yes, it is definitely the preferred date. I know you can check it.
All right, and then for completeness, 1 May town meeting.
You gonna have a cookout after that? Maybe a claim day?
Let's just hope it's not 1:15 a.m. Like November. And you got a good photo of that, Mike?
I have a photo of, yeah, let me get it again.
Just
Aaron, you got the dates. Aaron, you've got the dates.
Yeah, do you need me at town meeting? Do you want me at town meeting?
Yes, please.
Are we done for the evening?
We're getting pretty darn close.
Motion to close?
So there is one thing you had
So-
asked for, which was at the planning board to kind of direct people's attention. So one thing that didn't work well is to have just a two-pager, one page, two sides. On the front side is just a very brief, it's the vision and the goals and a very brief description of the process. And on the back side asks 3 questions. First question is, what do you most appreciate about this plan? Second one is there anything that concerns you? And the third one is there anything you find difficult to understand or you need more information about it? And then just additional comments. So that can help to get people to think about it in a different way rather than specifics, and give us some information that we could use for town meeting. So if people find something, especially if a lot of people really appreciate some aspects, then we know there's a lot of support for that. If some people really are concerned about something, we know to address those concerns. And if there are people who don't understand some things, we know to explain them better.
The thing I'd asked you to add on this, where you said, is convenient for you.
Yep. Yeah.
Mike, anything else?
Nope.
Renato?
No.
Anna?
I have questions, I had a couple comments on the action steps that have been written up. If I just send those to Maren, just forward?
Yep.
Sure, that's fine. Thank you.
Mike, anything else to add?
Bill, close it.
All right, I'll take a motion on the 2 minutes for November 15th and December 7th.
Sick of this progressive and informative.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes from November 15th and December 7th. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Yeah,
Done.
that's a good point.
Okay, adjournment?
Move.
All those in favor? Aye. Dawn, thank you. TV's done.